Chapter 250. Before the first ray of sunlight arrived, pitch-black elves transformed into the emissaries of the night and arrived in the mortal world. When everyone saw that it was actually the dark elves who entered, they were astonished and astonished. After all, in most situations, this species represented evil. Perhaps only the demons and devils of the Chaos Abyss had a worse reputation than the Dark Elves. Even the undead were more popular than the Dark Elves. However, the Dark Elves were doubtlessly an anomaly among the entire Dark Elf species. This was the first time that a Dark Elf knight had appeared in the mortal world. They slowly moved forward in formation. Unlike the Dark Elves who were skilled with daggers and poisons, the Dark Elves had glorious holy swords, sturdy tower shields, and most importantly, crosses surrounded by holy light and the holy light on the knight's bodies. This caused the human holy knight in the stands to be filled with astonishment. Dark elves can become holy knight as well. How is that possible? How can the evil dark elves receive the blessing of the holy light? Because your god of holy light is an idiot. I didn't say this out loud, but I had no intention of hiding my malicious mockery. Heh. I once had a friend who was a legend-ranked dark elf holy knight. Not only that, she even had the potential to become a saint. Sigh, it's a pity that she's not here. Some holy knight knights had expressions of disbelief, while others nodded in astonishment. However, I didn't hide my mockery at all, causing the female knight to glare angrily at me. Ever since she returned home and learned of my true identity, she became quite hostile towards me. It seemed that I had accidentally severely offended her. The emblem of the town's security knight squadron was a tightly clenched golden fist, representing unity and teamwork. There was also a blunt knife stuck in the middle of the fist, representing that violence should be restrained. Yep, this emblem definitely wasn't referring to anything disharmonious, nor was it referring to someone's grudge against a certain company named after their fist. Sortis was so cute, so why did people always want to cut her up? Wasn't it more like how people grew explosive mushrooms everywhere and insulted the environment? Cough. Let's stop talking about other worlds and get back to the main topic at hand. Unlike the regular Night Order, which mainly focused on battle formations, the most important task of the town's security Night Order was undoubtedly to suppress chaos, eliminate bandits, chase away wild beasts, and other small-scale battles. In order to make it more convenient for them to fight on smaller battlefields, they were mainly organized in small teams. The captain or vice captain of every team was a dark elf knight from the underground. It was still the same old routine of using the old to lead the new. There was a wide variety of members, but most of them were still thick-skinned knight or youngsters who had decided to embark on the path of becoming a knight. Reason? Indeed, the thief class was agile, the warrior class was nimble, and the mage class had great adaptability. They all seemed to be very suitable for working in the city, but in terms of reputation, none of these three mainstream classes were very good. The thief class was known to be sneaky and did things for money, while the warrior class was known to be barbaric and violent. It was also quite obvious that they talked with their fists. The mage class was also viewed by most people as an evil and non-believer. It was quite easy to obtain respect and fear, but it was impossible to obtain trust. The mage class was far less famous than the holy knight, just knight and knight classes. A holy knight had to follow the teachings of the holy light. A just knight had to follow the law. Even an ordinary knight would have to follow the knight's virtues and be loyal to their lord and ruler. Reputation and honor were far more important than their lives. In order to obtain trust from others, as well as to convince the other members of the team, the majority of the team leaders would be members of the knight class. According to a certain person, although the brains of these metal cans were mostly empty, they could all rely on their faces to make a living. Yep, the guy said this to the holy knight class, and the result was that he got beaten up by his colleagues. All right, I'll be honest. Apart from Roland, who was a professional at courting death, no one else would be courting death to such an extent. The future town security night squad would spend most of their time carrying out missions in the city. They would have specialized intelligence, logistics, and magic support squads to support them. Whether or not they could successfully carry out their work would depend on whether or not they could establish an overall image of being selfless and trustworthy. That was why choosing the Iron-Brained Knight class was the best choice that had already been proven in Sulphur Mountain City. A squad of 10 to 12 people would be led by an elite Dark Elf Knight, equipped with top-notch equipment. Any criminal would have a headache just by looking at them. The entire town security night squad was estimated to have 14,000 members, which was more than enough to take care of several cities at the same time. The reason why the military parade had to be held at night was because these dark elves were unable to adapt to sunlight. For the time being, they would have to be mainly on duty at night. And once their special equipment was ready, they would be able to move about normally in the day. What was special equipment? Momo, who is currently being used as a model, was wearing one. The biggest reason why dark elves were afraid of light was because their eyes and skin were unable to withstand sunlight. Their skin was fine, except that it would burn if they stayed in the sun for too long. However, their weak eyes were unable to withstand even the slightest bit of light. But this wasn't something that couldn't be solved. The dark elves wore black dwarven goggles with dark green resin lenses. The top-notch water element 9-headed dragon emperor skin was made into a cool jacket, leather gloves, and a black collar. The dark elves wore thick leather boots and stockings on their long, slender legs. Plus, they wore purple eyeshadow and lipstick, giving them a rebellious sense of beauty that transcended the mortal world. As for whether or not this was a reference to some special job class, cough, cough, at least I didn't go so far as to add a leather whip. Of course, there were also a few dark elves with unique interests who brought their own leather whip. For example, a certain mad dog named Momo was currently excitedly performing her whip dance, causing the citizens to exclaim in surprise. As for those perverts who voluntarily came to be whipped, let's just ignore them. After putting on this top-notch water elemental equipment and applying Olivia's special sunscreen on their exposed skin, they were basically completely blocked from the sun. They didn't need to wear a pure black cloak like the dark elves who walked on the ground in the past. They also only dared to move around at night. With this type of equipment, their resistance to sunlight would greatly increase. Some dark elves had experimented and found that after wearing this equipment and applying sunscreen oil, they would be able to move about normally under the sun for 5 hours. As their bodies gradually got used to it, it was expected that they would be able to move about under the sun for more than 8 hours every day. And for gray elves like Momo, after wearing this equipment, they would basically be able to ignore the negative effects of sunlight. Actually, with the underground dark elves' magical abilities, it wasn't completely impossible for them to resist sunlight. However, under Rose's theocratic society, anyone who researched this would basically be going against Rose. What? You're researching how to resist sunlight? You intend to betray and escape to the surface world? Now that Rose was gone, new techniques would probably appear soon. Of course, even now, this equipment set wouldn't be cheap. Dwarven protective goggles usually used gemstone lenses, which were highly transmissive and ineffective. Under my suggestion, Amelia's special resin lenses worked, but it wouldn't be easy to mass-produce them. Although they already had a female parent, they would need to wait until Amelia's magical pine trees grew into a forest before they could be mass-produced. And although there was still a lot of 9-headed dragon skin left, it was far too valuable. It would be too wasteful to just use it to block sunlight. The impenetrable dragon skin's defensive capabilities wouldn't be any worse than steel armor. However, I didn't have any top-level blacksmiths at my disposal who couldn't make full use of this material. In order to avoid wasting the dragon skin, I only did some simple and crude work on it. I didn't even add any magic runes or enchantments. Although the dragon skin's defensive capabilities were probably the same as the dragon skin's natural defense, it also preserved the dragon skin's own magic resistance to the greatest extent. Dark elves already had natural magic resistance to begin with. After wearing the incredibly high magic resistance dragon skin armor, they would basically be immune to all magic effects below the gold rank, becoming true mage killers. I nodded in satisfaction as I watched the town security knight squadron walk past. Not only would they be the city's future manager and the main knight squadron's reserve squadron, they would also be professional mages. Of course, when necessary, it wouldn't be impossible for them to play the role of mage killers. After this fist squadron walked past, the next group was an unexpected group of guests. The one walking at the very front was a tall tauren. He had a simple and honest smile on his face as he constantly waved at the passersby on both sides of him. He was quite famous. However, due to certain special reasons and extreme statements, such as, "What's there to hide about a good man?" or "What's wrong with men being perverts?" Not only did he receive extreme disgust from some women, but he also received the love and respect of most male citizens. Of course, there were also a few females with heavy tastes who supported him. When this highest-ranking bishop, who was simultaneously enjoying cheers and boos, walked past, the armed forces of the church behind him revealed a sinister expression. They were a group of judges wearing black robes. However, they were also law incantators, judges, and justice knight. There weren't many of them, and their formation wasn't very orderly. However, the dignity of these top-level experts was as bright as a lighthouse for those who knew what they were. So much gold? How is this possible? Gold rank? Look closely, there are so many legends in that group. The rumors of the underground were actually true. Legends are everywhere, and liches are nothing more than dogs. They can casually throw a brick and smash 2 semi-gods to death. After viciously glaring at the idiot who compared liches to dogs and even intended to smash a semi-god lich to death, I turned my attention to the audience below the stage. I was also quite satisfied with their performance. Even the weakest of these old fellows from the Hall of Law was a gold rank. They were all qualified judges, and they were the true foundation of the Church of Law that had been accumulated for nearly 100 years. 236 gold ranks, 46 legends, and 4 saint ranks. This was the highest combat strength that was more than enough to sweep through the underground. This showed the world the confidence of the Church of Law, and it was precisely because of their existence that Definder was destined to never fall. Just thinking about it, if this city was invaded and great judgment was activated here, what would the effects be after all the law job classes leveled up by 1 rank? More than 200 legends, almost 50 saint ranks, and 4 myth ranks. Perhaps this amount wouldn't be enough to kill a god, but it would be no problem for them to kill an army of several 100,000. As an independent church organization, they shouldn't have appeared in Donglan's military parade. However, due to our special structure and relationship, it was time for them to come out and scare people. Of course, compared to the established true god churches that had semi-gods, the Church of Law was still quite immature. However, the power they had displayed so far was enough for the other churches to reevaluate this new church's power and foundation. After all, the God of Law had only ascended to godhood less than 2 years ago, yet the Law faction was already so powerful. The Town Security Knight and these powerful law job classes were all a part of the Church of Law. In my plan, as the Church of Law gradually became the national religion of Donglan and even the entire Mist Alliance, and as more and more cities established courts, these existences that were originally seeds of the Church of Law would also spread. A judge who could control the situation would be the leader, a dozen or so assistants and acolytes would be the backbone, and several small teams of trained Town Security Knights would be the law enforcers. When the impartial courts, which also serve as the Church of Law, began to operate, the cities would change one after another, and the number of law job classes in each city would increase. My blueprint for the future doesn't include those foolish old nobles and feudal domain lords. They were the greatest wealth that I had accumulated over the years, as well as the most important step in whether or not my plan would succeed. An individual's power was limited. Without their help, it would be impossible for me to achieve my goal. But if the Town Security Knight and law job classes represented the changes that were currently occurring in this country, then what was next would likely be a future that required more hard work. Look, it's the Silver Cross battle flag. My nephew is serving there. It's the Silver Cross Battle Squadron. It's the meritorious battle squadron from the war against the Beastmen. In terms of popularity, the Silver Cross Battle Squadron, which was mostly made up of local soldiers, was actually the most popular. This was especially so after they achieved great results in the war against the Beastmen. They became the topic of discussion on the streets. our children, our heroes. When the fluttering silver cross battle flag was raised in the distance, the guests from the Holy Church revealed smiles. Silver crosses were often associated with holy light. It seemed that there was finally something acceptable. Seeing how excited the citizens were, it seemed that the silver cross battle flag had a good reputation. But very quickly, their smiles froze on their faces. Undead Knight Fanderk and Lonnie were the captain and vice-captain of the Silver Cross Battle Squadron, so they naturally walked at the very front. Following that, the complete design of the Silver Cross Battle Flag was revealed. It represented the cross of a sword and a staff, representing both magic and martial arts. However, it was a completely different existence from the cross used to pray for the descent of holy light. And the 4 elemental swordcasters who used the power of the elements caused the holy light users to be extremely disgusted. After all, in the eyes of the extreme holy light fundamentalists, the power of the elements was also an existence that needed to be purified. However, the 4 elemental swordcasters couldn't do anything about it. After all, there was no rule that stated that the Silver Cross battle flag was exclusive to the Holy Church. As for the other guests, they didn't have the time to think so much about it. The single mecha walking at the very front had already attracted all of their attention. Single mecha, Sith Zero. It has a full metal exterior and is painted with obsidian for protection. Its top speed is 30 kilometers per hour, which is more than enough to keep up with the cavalry. The armor's thickness and structure can be customized according to the cost. If magic metal is used, it won't be difficult for it to be immune to silver-ranked attacks. Seeing that everyone's attention had been drawn to my explanation, I paused for a moment before tossing out a bombshell. Although its defense is excellent, wearing it won't affect the user's ability to cast spells. This is doubtlessly the best companion for archmages in the future. Although controlling it requires elemental control, we also sell mithril spiritual swords that even ordinary people can use. It's enough to control it through magic swords. In other words, as long as you buy it, even a completely powerless ruler will instantly have combat strength, at least at the silver rank. Not only that, you'll also obtain a mithril spiritual sword and have a certain level of elemental control. As I waved my hand, the mecha warrior took off a portion of his outer armor. The elemental power around his body could be ignored, but the red and black mithril spiritual sword was obviously the mecha's core component. This obviously went against common sense, causing the audience to be in an uproar. Mithril spiritual sword? It was a magical sword that had been modified using magical engineering. Originally, I was the one who came up with the name Silver Sword, but after everyone strongly rejected it, I could only helplessly add another word. As for the so-called mithril, gold watches, gold pens, and gold teeth might not all contain gold. There definitely wouldn't be gold in gold-packed milk powder, and there wouldn't be either water or silver in mercury. If there really was platinum in melatonin, it would be accused of poisoning. Everyone understood how merchants worked. How many mechas do you have? We Rhodes want all of them. You dare to fight with us, San Antonio? Give all of them to us. We'll use gold of equal value to exchange for them. So what if we steal them? You have money, but we Casolan don't. Why don't you try declaring war on us? As long as we conquer 15 countries, we'll have borders with each other. Even if some people didn't see the military value of these mechas, just the fact that they could give mortals combat strength was enough to tempt any emperor. Judging from how they were fighting over the mechas, it was likely that they had all received a death order from their master. It would seem that releasing information about this mechas in advance was the correct choice. In fact, even the Holy Church was tempted and sent out professional negotiators. May the Holy Light bless you. We can sense the boundless power of Holy Light coming from your Highness. Fortunately, the mundane matters of the world didn't stop you from exploring the path of Holy Light. May the Holy Knight's justice forever bless you. All right then, it would seem that the Holy Church had also fallen into a trap. Others probably wouldn't understand what he was saying, but for me, it was a daily occurrence. What he really meant was this: hey brat, you're all following the Holy Light. Don't be too greedy. Otherwise, if you screw up this time, our boss, the God of Holy Light, will come looking for you. even if I'm already following the path of law. May the holy light bless you. Even in the darkest of nights, the holy light will illuminate your path. Popper, our boss is now Womiance. If you don't have any money, then scram. Go back to where you came from. Ah, my little brother who follows both the holy light and the path of law. Idiot who's two-timing. Your generosity, petty, and courage suicidal, have given me a revelation, scared. All right then, since it was rare to meet someone who understood this holy knight was actually quite interested. He started using slang after slang as he began a bargain. While this holy knight and I were happily conversing in the Argo language, the others were already at a loss, including my teacher who was known as the strongest holy knight. After all, he didn't have the experience of being a ceremonial knight who specialized in diplomacy. In their eyes, the two of us were just flattering each other with a bunch of pleasantries, but there wasn't any substance to it. In reality, we had already exchanged more than 10 rounds of opinions. I watched as the Sith Zero machine disappeared into the distance. They didn't even talk about the price, but I had already achieved my expectations. This was only a demonstration. How could it possibly be sold so easily? I still needed time to make up for the missing parts. You over there, hurry up and pick up the left arm that you dropped in front of you. Things would get out of hand if you were seen. There are 2 Sith Zero machines in total. The other one is still under construction. There will be an auction in a month, and both Sith Zero machines will be sold. The next batch of Sith Zero machines will be at least a year from now. If someone buys both Sith Zero machines at the same time, they'll give you the secret silver sword creation method as a bonus. I can accept physical items as collateral. Even god equipment is fine. The value of these free items far surpass the actual item itself. However, the amount of money needed to obtain 2 items in a row would be more than twice the maximum amount that other countries could afford. This promotion method was filled with malicious intent, but it also gave the Holy Knights enough time to obtain permission from their superiors and raise funds. Judging from how they were secretly competing with each other, it was highly unlikely that they would come to a secret agreement. The price this time wouldn't be low. As for giving me the method to create the mithril spiritual sword, actually, spreading magical engineering was an important strategic goal of mine. In the foreseeable future, all the human kingdoms would stand on the same side. It would be quite troublesome to have weak allies. Spreading this seed of power that would eventually spread to the entire world would also be helpful for the overall situation. Of course, it would be even better if I could sell it for a good price. Besides, our research power and direction were limited. Rather than starving to death while guarding our treasure vault, it would be better to sell the seed and exchange it for future harvests to increase our overall power level. As for whether or not there would be a backdoor or a Trojan horse that would steal the Holy Knight's technology, actually, there was no need to ask such a question. Would there be any backdoors or free items in the top-level software and technology products from my previous world? Of course, in order to prevent the Holy Knight from getting too hot-headed and forcefully stealing the Holy Knight's technology, the next item was the most valuable one, as well as my ace in the hole. Mizar, it's time to make an appearance. Chapter 251. The military parade had reached its climax. The appetizers had been served, and it was time for the main course. As the Dragonbone airship slowly sailed through the sea of clouds, it was followed by pitch-black clouds and everyone's shock and disbelief. The gigantic bone airship wasn't surrounded by dark clouds, but by pure death magic. It was completely different from the Borealis, which had a mechanical appearance. The black mist and bones condensed by the power of death were doubtlessly proof that it was an undead airship. The skeletal airship's hull and pitch-black magical sails were both important characteristics of undead airships and ghost ships. Unlike the Borealis, which had already been completed and only used the undead system to strengthen and control the airship, the Mizar used similar design and technology to the Borealis. But if there was a lack of industrial or technological level, undead magic would be used instead. Were there any special alloys suitable for airships? Then let's use Dragonbone. It was sturdy and durable, as well as an excellent source of undead magic. Although it looked a little frightening, didn't the eerie white Dragonbone have a special sense of beauty although most mortals wouldn't appreciate it. The airship's mana pool and mage tower couldn't be built. Actually, the serene spirit tower and soul tower weren't bad either. It was just that there were too many ghosts, and the mana generated was specifically for undead magic, which was a fatal negative energy attack to the living. But the Mizar was powered by undead magic, and since living crew members couldn't use it, then let's use undead crew members. The flames and smoke coming out of the airship's engine were black. Even the sky had been dyed black. Then that was right. How could an airship powered by undead magic have any other color? As for the ghost sails on the deck and the spirits blowing at it, it was all too normal. It was just a routine for ghost ships to increase their speed. It had its own corrosion domain and aura of fear. It was already an undead airship. It was made of dragon bone. It was normal for it to have two natural abilities. It would be great if it didn't have dragon's might, but at least it was a positive effect and would be a bonus on the battlefield. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, the only difference between the Mizar and the legendary ghost ship was that this airship was made of higher quality materials and could fly. Due to a certain person's bad taste, the completed Mizar looked like a giant flying bone dragon. He especially emphasized the feeling of a vicious beast, afraid that it wouldn't look like a Demon King's airship. At this moment, the several hundred-meter-long bone dragon battleship covered the sky. Dark clouds covered the sky. When this giant beast truly appeared in front of the world, it brought not only shock, but also fear and astonishment. The Holy Church's guests had the most intense reactions. They had long viewed the undead as their mortal enemy. Those with swords immediately unsheathed them, while those who prepared divine arts raised their staffs. Even Estrada himself touched his battle hammer thoughtfully. This is the second ship of the Big Dipper fleet, the Mizar. I'm sure all of you recognize its companion ship, the Borealis. However, Donlan's industrial base is relatively weak, so we use some tricks to make up for it. You evil necromancers! A holy knight who was unable to restrain himself roared angrily, but his companions stopped him. Obviously, this wasn't the time to turn on the undead. However, all the priests and holy knights had ashen expressions. This incredibly evil undead creature had obviously crossed their bottom line. Actually, if it wasn't for the fact that the crimeless city kept emphasizing how harmless these high-level undead were, and if it wasn't for the Cardinals repeatedly emphasizing the importance of this mission, a conflict or even a battle would have occurred long ago. However, this was exactly the effect I wanted. I had long since disliked the Holy Church. Since it wasn't a good time to openly turn on them, I might as well ignore them for the time being. If there was only a single Borealis, especially since there were rumors that this airship came from an illegitimate source, it would be impossible for the various countries to do business with me while they hesitated. But after I displayed the Mizar, even though these people seemed to be disgusted, as long as we truly proved that we had the ability to create mid-sized airships, there would be countless orders. Although we still haven't mastered the technology to create large-scale airships, and we'll need to use some substitutes, we've already mastered the technology to create small-scale airships. Everyone look, those snow-white airships are our most advanced Snow Eagle model airships. The Mizar's cabin door opened, and numerous new Snow Eagle airships flew out and began to circle in the sky, causing many exclamations of surprise. Their bodies were painted snow-white, and only their heads were painted with the symbol of a white eagle. There was far too little time, and we didn't have enough technicians, so it was impossible for us to completely digest the technology we had. The only difference between these Snow Eagle airships and the Ottoman Vulture airships would be their outer shells and paint. But for me, the most regrettable part was that my proposal to name these Snow Eagle airships sounds like they're cursed with bad luck. Snow Eagle airships typically have a crew of 4: the pilot, the cannoneer, the commander, and the radio operator. We can make adjustments based on the actual situation, such as adding a cannoneer or a mage. These airships can fight for 16 hours at a time. At the auction, we'll be auctioning off 2 Snow Eagle airships. After that, we'll also be accepting orders, but since we need to purchase all sorts of rare ores, not only will we need to pay a 70% deposit, We'll also need to delay the delivery based on the actual situation. Not only would it be delayed, after all the materials, production techniques, and so on were taken care of, we would also need to prioritize the orders from our own country and the Mist Alliance countries. Even if everything went smoothly, it would take at least 1 or 2 years before the first batch of airships could be sold. And by that time, my Big Dipper airship fleet would have already been prepared. As for the 70% deposit, 70% of the final auction price as a deposit was quite a large amount. If we simultaneously accepted orders from several dozen countries, even if we didn't do anything next year, we wouldn't need to worry about Donglan's food shortage for the next few years. But while everyone seemed to be getting more and more enthusiastic, someone surprisingly directly expressed her dissatisfaction. What's so amazing about that? Isn't it just the ability to fly? Those airships are nothing in front of us, the Holy Light Blade. Avla had an expression of displeasure as she spoke, as if airships were nothing in front of her. However, I knew that she was telling the truth. The Holy Light Blade had a special team that consisted entirely of Holy Knight with angel bloodlines. In front of a high-level Holy Knight who had the ability to fly, these airships were nothing. Even taking a step back, in front of Holy Knight who was at least at the Saint rank, these small airships would be nothing more than punching bags. However, showing off at an inappropriate time would easily attract hostile glares. I didn't even bother replying, as everyone else rolled their eyes at this silly girl. The meaning behind their unspoken words was quite obvious. The Holy Church is incredibly powerful and has as many powerful individuals as the clouds in the sky. You don't care about airships, but others aren't as capable as you are. Avla seemed like she still wanted to say something, but a large shadow suddenly descended from the sky, causing her to immediately shut up. Or perhaps I should say that she was so frightened that she couldn't even close her mouth. There were 13 dragons, 8 of which were red dragons and 5 of which were black dragons. Although most of them were young dragons with relatively little experience, Dragon Knight had already become a super rare job class in modern times. It had been several hundred years since dragons had appeared in such a large group, which was more than enough to shock the world. I have a pretty good relationship with a new dragon queen of the underground. She rented my dragons. Although the rental fee is inconceivably high, it's a good match for our airships, isn't it? This was a blatant display of strength and flaunting. No matter how strong your angel team is, can you even compare to dragons? Only with the protection of an adult dragon would an enormous airship be able to display its full potential. Conversely, with an enormous airship as an excellent combat platform, the dragons would also be able to display their full combat strength. Most of the gem dragons and color dragons on the surface had their own territories, and their relationships with each other were quite loose. They didn't have any natural enemies, and the Dragon Slayer heroes were no different from idiots most of the time. Only the underground's Dragon City, which had become the home and pillar of support for the dragons in the underground where powerful individuals were everywhere, still had such powerful charisma. Unlike the underground world, where flying ability was limited, the giant dragons on the surface came and went without a trace. If they didn't want their capital to be attacked by terrorists every 2 or 3 days, even the super empires wouldn't dare to offend the dragon race. Of course, making dragons, or even just young dragons, listen to humans would doubtlessly damage the dignity of the dragons. Even Little Red, who currently had great authority, had to put in a lot of effort and even make many concessions in other areas in order to make renting the airships possible. And it was precisely because of the appearance of the dragons that all the representatives of the Underground Dragon Alliance gave up on the idea of using other methods to obtain airship technology. So this is the legendary Roland? He's actually connected to the Dragon Queen, and he's even able to make the dragons work for him. It would seem that threatening and pressuring him won't have a good result. In order to become a high-quality arms dealer, apart from being able to obtain high-quality goods, the most important thing would probably be to have a background and power level that wouldn't be afraid of betrayal. But now, since using military force was no longer an option, the only option was to purchase the airships with real money. Perhaps it was only a single airship. Even if it was impossible to analyze the technology to make it practical, long-term scouting escorting important personnel, and other strategic abilities would still be difficult to buy. The background was still the airship performance, but everyone's faces had paled. The arrogant and unruly dragons weren't very obedient even under the Dragon Queen's command. They were quite displeased at being stared at by mortals who were making a fuss about nothing. After circling around the airship twice, they left first. But the atmosphere was already heated up. Just how long did you say you'd need to delay the order? Will it be delivered within 3 years? Can we accept a deposit? Considering the relationship between our countries, can we increase the order? We can provide all the materials your country needs at the best price. Your Highness, this seems to be in conflict with our private agreement. If you need gold coins, our Ottoman Empire, so many favorable conditions were offered. This bait was sufficient. They were willing to pay anything in order to purchase an airship. May I ask if it's possible to accept higher-level orders? For example, the Mizar above. Our San Antonio is willing to use technology of the same level in exchange. In fact, some people even had their eyes on a Mizar. But obviously, this directly touched a certain person's bottom line. Isolde, you actually dare to touch the undead's domain. This time, it was Cardinal Soros' turn to shout in anger. But San Antonio had already obtained first-hand combat information on the Borealis from Red Maple City. How could they possibly give up on such a powerful national weapon just because of pressure from a cardinal? Cardinal Soros, you misunderstand. What we're looking for is only a large-scale airship. Since you have an objection, let's give up for now. Even though they verbally said that they were giving up, it didn't seem like they were going to openly oppose each other. But judging from their fiery gazes, they had no intention of giving up. They were probably just temporarily refusing to give up on the other party's face and moving from being in front of the public to behind the scenes. The higher-ups of the Holy Church could naturally tell that the representatives of the Holy Church didn't mean what they said. But what could they do? Not interfering with other countries' internal affairs was a basic rule of the Holy Church. But if they allowed undead technology to spread like this, it would doubtlessly be blasphemy against the teachings of the Holy Light. But since even the true God-Womians had admitted that there were undead here, it would be impossible to use this as an excuse to cause trouble. Roland, you lied to me 2 days ago, which is doubtlessly a type of humiliation. In order to protect my personal honor, I challenge you to a duel. If you lose, give up on spreading such evil technology to the outside world. The white-winged angel half-blood stepped forward, intending to use this as an excuse to challenge me. Amongst nobles, it was common for such inexplicable conflicts to occur for the sake of honor and trivial matters. Those who didn't accept it would be looked down upon by the world. However, I only shrugged and smiled as I looked below the stage. Perhaps this action didn't contain any anger, but it was probably even more insulting than looking down on others. My unspoken meaning was quite obvious, and the surrounding audience was even beginning to snicker. Who are you? Do you think you're worthy? Ivala's face was completely red with anger. She was about to immediately attack Estrada, but he stopped her. The strongest holy knight had a bitter smile on his face as he raised his battle hammer, which was surrounded by holy light. Roland, I should be qualified enough. Perhaps it's time for us to settle our old scores today. However, this is only a duel between master and disciple, so don't overdo it. If you lose, please promise to give up on selling the undead airship. This is far too evil. Avila had imperceptibly helped him out greatly. Roland had been hiding from him for the past few days, and today was the first time they met. There were many things that they could discuss. If it wasn't for this female knight who seemed to be the vanguard, it wouldn't have been appropriate for Estrada to ask for such a duel. For Estrada, spreading undead technology was only a small matter. Protecting the Holy Church's honor was only something he could do in passing. The most important thing was to use this opportunity to figure out Roland's hidden cards and motives. The undead are evil? Who made this rule? The God of Holy Light? Or the Holy Church itself? Chapter 252. The Church of Holy Light and Holy Light had their own merits for being able to reach such a level. The purest light actually represented the purest order. In a world of darkness, Holy Light would light up and protect everyone, dispel darkness and those corrupted by chaos. That was the most original holy light doctrine. If chaos distorted order, then holy light would erase the distorted portion and return it to the void. That's right, not erase the already distorted portion, but completely erase the distortion. I used to devoutly believe in holy light because I believed that holy light could save everything. I believe in the holy light's teachings about order finally dispelling chaos. He was not a friend, but an enemy. Being firm and decisive was very satisfying. However, if that was all there was to it, it was still not enough. Creator He's two daughters inherited her power of creation. However, they were split into order and chaos. This was the best explanation. These were the two pillars of He's world, as well as its basic structure. It would be impossible to have either one missing. If twisted order is an inseparable part of the world, and orderly order and disorderly chaos are the foundation of this world, then erasing some chaos is no different from digging out a piece of seawater from the ocean. This will only make the wind and waves that fill up the gap even fiercer. Perhaps this is the truth behind why the holy war will never end. A world without chaos would be a lifeless world. There would be no competition, no random factors, and no desire to improve. The result would be that there would be no possibility of evolution. And in a world without order, if all the factors and choices became random, perhaps nobody would be able to survive. After all, even the beasts in the forest had their own unspoken rules. There was chaos within order, and there was order within chaos. On the side of chaos, even demons had a hierarchy. On the side of order, even the angels that were ridiculed as old-fashioned had their own goals and pursuits. Simply using violence against violence might be effective, but the prerequisite was that the victor had to completely suppress the loser or even directly destroy the loser. And in this world, that obviously wouldn't work. That's right, in my eyes, holy light was a type of violence. If you don't obey my orders, I'll destroy your existence. If this wasn't violence, then what was? That's why, although I still believe in the origin of holy light, I also despised it. Even though I still used it, I only treated it as a convenient tool, just like how I also used the power of the elements and the power of death. Who says that the undead are evil? The Holy Church? Or the God of holy light? Ha, stupid. From the very start, holy light and the God of holy light were wrong. My voice wasn't loud, nor did it contain any sarcasm. It was as if I was simply stating the truth. However, in the eyes of anyone who believed in the holy light, this was a blasphemy and questioning of the holy light. I was definitely a heretic among heretics. Roland, how dare you? Estrada was no longer able to take it any longer. His furious roar created a storm that blew away the clouds. A blinding pillar of light shot into the sky, and his materialized holy light domain suppressed everyone present. The entire ground trembled in fear from Estrada's roar. Perhaps the current Estrada was already the strongest user of holy light in the entire world. In my current state, if I were to fight against an enraged Estrada, it would probably be a single hit from his hammer. However, I laughed so hard that I almost cried. Even if he was ridiculously strong, it wouldn't change the fact that he was an idiot. I'm dying of laughter. What generation is it now? You're actually so stupid. That's why you've always been a pitiful idiot who's been walking around in circles in confusion for your entire life. You've always been driven around by others, and you've only watched tragedy happen one after another. Right now, I'm probably a heretic who betrays the holy light in your eyes. In that case, esteemed teacher, may I ask what I'm holding in my hand? There's a golden glow on my index finger. It was as tiny as a firefly, and it was vibrating between my fingers. However, only those who truly understood the teachings of the holy light would be able to recognize that this was the purest source of holy light. This was something that only God's favorites favored by the holy light could do. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. Estrada had already said such blasphemous words, so how could he possibly use holy light, not to mention the highest quality of holy light? I was once the son of the holy light, the son of light. My war angel bloodline was activated, and I unfurled my snow-white wings. My divine face appeared in front of everyone, and the golden holy light of the holy angel continued to grow. Another pillar of light belonging to me appeared in the sky. Perhaps it was much smaller than Estrada's pillar of light, but in terms of its ability to pierce through darkness and illuminate the land, in front of true sunlight, Estrada was nothing more than a high-intensity light bulb. The one with the greatest reaction was actually that little angel. Ivla's entire body was trembling, and she could only obey her instincts and kneel on the ground. Her angel bloodline was constantly reminding her that the male before her, who was controlling pure holy light, was a superior angel of a much higher power level than she was. Angels, the incarnation of order, were a species that placed the most importance on hierarchy. In front of me, who was now an ancient war angel, she had to remain humble. I once believed that light would eventually drive away darkness, but I soon discovered that that wasn't enough. Sunlight and shadow will forever be twins. Pure light will never be able to destroy shadow. It's the opposite, which is why pure light will only create pure darkness. That's why I made my choice. Pitch black flames started burning on his left hand. No, he wasn't burning at all. Every flickering flame was actually the wailing of souls, the purest power of death. Didn't you all say that holy light and chaos are mortal enemies? In that case, you can explain it like that. I'm a heretic, yet I can use both holy light and the power of death at the same time. Why don't you all use the teachings of holy light to explain it to me? Let me hear just what nonsense your god of holy light is spouting. All the holy light job class members had expressions of disbelief as if the sky was collapsing. In their worldview and common sense, holy light's duty was to destroy chaos. Holy light and death were like fire and water, and as long as they came into contact with each other, they would definitely die. Yet, this incarnation of an angel was actually controlling both the power of holy light and death at the same time. Ivla, hold on. Don't think so much and maintain your heart. You're a child of holy light. Soros's angry roar attracted my attention. The white-winged half-blood angel was now completely kneeling, drenched in cold sweat. The tips of her wings were actually beginning to turn black. Child, are you that afraid of knowing the truth? Your faith is actually beginning to waver, and you're beginning to fall. TSK, TSK, TSK. Fallen angel, you're quite the rare one. In that case, let me help you strengthen your resolve. See, child, this is the truth that the gods don't dare to tell you. I laughed maniacally as I combined pure holy light and death flames together. Estrada, who had already guessed what was going on, finally acted. He couldn't just sit by and watch all this happen. There were already far too many tragedies in the past. Roland, asterisk clang, asterisk my battle hammer, covered in holy flames, was blocked by a familiar silver holy sword. However, the wielder of the sword was different this time. Her face was exactly the same as Roland's, and she also had an evil smile that was similar to Roland's. However, she also had an additional hint of innocence and feminine gentleness. At this moment, Estrada felt as if he had returned to the past. Back then, he was still a young and immature youth. He always seemed to be fearlessly smiling evilly, calling himself teacher and wanting to ask him about the teachings of holy light. Big Brother Roland's teacher, please don't disturb Big Brother Roland. He's only showing you the hidden truth. If you don't feel guilty, please take a look. Estrada didn't move. However, it wasn't Renee's lame persuasion that moved him. It was just that he was faintly opening up a dimensional door, and a pressure that made even him tremble came from it. This was a power that even the gods feared. He didn't have the confidence that he could easily break through Roland's defenses. And it was precisely because of this slight pause that I was nearing the end of my work. Pitch black flames and golden light clashed together. However, there was no explosion or collision that everyone expected. Pitch black flames and golden light fused together. They gradually intertwined and complemented each other until finally, Ivla couldn't wait any longer for the final result. The purer a painting was, the easier it was to be dyed black. She floated in the sky as her wings began to turn from white to black. Just like how holy light could only destroy the undead and demons, It was unable to reverse the process of transforming the undead and demons into demons. Since the fallen goddess had already begun, there was no stopping it. See, this is the truth. The black and golden light had both melted away. All that remained was pure white. Finally, everything faded away, leaving behind a white dove in my hand. Although this dove was only 1/10 the size of a real white dove, and even though she was so weak that she couldn't even fly, this was enough to prove everything. This was a life. Creating life from nothing was the lifelong goal of countless alchemists and mages. However, not a single one of them had ever achieved anything. After all, this was already the domain of the gods. Not only that, this was a domain that only the creator goddesses had reached. Why did the creator goddesses' daughters inherit order and chaos? That's because only order and chaos can be combined together form the power of creation. Light dispels darkness? Ha! How much longer do you all want to keep up this ridiculous lie? As long as there's light, there'll be darkness. Light and darkness are interdependent. Pure darkness can also transform into light, and the end of light can transform into darkness. Look, isn't the evidence right in front of you? The black-winged fallen angel coldly looked at me. There was no trace of emotion in her black eyes. Pure holy light had already transformed into the purest darkness. Was there any more damning evidence than this? Estrada, as the strongest user of holy light, don't tell me that you haven't discovered anything. Do you dare to swear in the name of holy light that you haven't discovered the truth? Perhaps you've already discovered the clues more than 300 years ago. It's just that you've been avoiding the truth all this time. The strongest fool and the coward hesitated, not daring to speak. This hesitation was a tacit agreement, but it also caused a terrifying chain reaction. You don't dare, but I do. I, Roland Mist, swear in the name of holy light that holy light will never be able to completely destroy chaos. It will only cause a new tide of chaos to be born, making the holy war even more intense. If I'm lying, please take away my right to use holy light. My holy oath had been made, but my pillar of holy light was still in the clouds. This doubtlessly proved the truth of my words. More than one holy light job class member screamed in pain. Those who waver in faith will lose the protection of holy light. This was one of the teachings of holy light. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 holy light users had already lost their protection. Not a single youngster was spared. More than half of the envoys had become former holy knights and former priests. Only the ancient artifacts who had cultivated for more than 100 years were still able to maintain their original beliefs. Today's events absolutely cannot be leaked. Otherwise, it'll have a tremendous impact on the entire Holy Church. Estrada, kill them all. Faced with a desperate situation, Cardinal Soros finally tore off his usual mask of gentleness and decisively made his decision. Everyone in the square saw the fallen angel in midair. The envoys in the stands saw this miracle created by light and darkness. Not a single person could be spared. Estrada, you know what will happen if word of this gets out? The Holy Church had always considered itself to be the protector of humanity and order. If word of this got out, the foundations of the Holy Church and the teachings of holy light would be shaken. In his impression, the undefeatable Estrada was capable of killing everything in front of him. Soros himself was constantly praying to his own true God. However, in this holy land of the law god, how could he possibly connect to Estrada? Seeing that the Holy Knight wasn't moving, Soros started to get anxious. Finally, that seemingly young, ancient Holy Knight raised his head, but his face was already unrecognizable. His hair was gray, and his face was filled with wrinkles. In the blink of an eye, he had aged more than 10 years. I don't have absolute confidence in winning. I don't even have confidence in facing this little princess. I can't do it, and I don't want to do it anymore. Soros, whose face was pale, turned around to leave, but I stopped him. Hey, do you want to leave so easily? At the very least, you have to complete the mission that you came here for. That god of holy light's oracle should have been told me by now. That should be the words that he brought to me. Are you going to complete the mission that your boss entrusted to you, just like that? Soros' eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, but he had to complete the mission that God entrusted to him. He didn't want to see the person in front of him ever again, so he could only grit his teeth and say the oracle. I hope that you and I will fight against chaos together. After the battle, we shall become the twin pillars of order. Are you satisfied? Saint Roland, I understood immediately. This oracle was nothing more than an invitation from the god of holy light to form an alliance with the Law faction, who had already discovered the truth about Womians. As for the promise of splitting the world equally, it would be foolish to just listen to it. In that case, the title of saint was nothing more than the appetizer to the alliance. However, I knew about it, but the others didn't. The moment these words came out, the envoys from the various countries who had just escaped death were shocked once again. The contents of this oracle were already shocking enough, but the tone of the oracle, which seemed to be communicating with someone of the same level, was even more frightening. This miraculous power, such a tone of voice, could it be that Roland is an existence equivalent to the god of holy light? The god of holy light actually requested to form an alliance with the twin pillars of order? Is Roland's power strong enough to make the god of holy light make a concession? Many thoughts ran through the minds of the envoys. If this news were spread, everyone would have to reevaluate the prince of the icy, snow northern country. As for me, I nodded my head in satisfaction. Your sincerity is quite good. I agree to this invitation to form an alliance. Help me tell the god of holy light that I, Roland, agree to it. As for that saint, I'll leave him for you to play with. Ha ha. Then, please take care of me in the future, my dear allies. I took one last glance at Soros' expression, which was a mixture of extreme anger and fear. I laughed loudly as I left first. Today's harvest was already more than enough. Even if I forcefully used my frigid winter earth to create life, I would collapse from exhaustion if I didn't retreat now. After that insane prince left, all that was left in Soros' eyes was a scene of devastation. The envoys from the various countries hurriedly left as if they were avoiding the plague. Only Soros and his group were left in the stands. The former Holy Light job class members who had already lost their god's blessing were still sitting on the ground in despair. Estrada, who had aged several decades, still had his head lowered as he sighed helplessly. The fallen Angel Ivla, who seemed to be thinking about something, had already left early. In the end, the elderly bishop could only helplessly collapse on the ground as he thought about the terrifying future in the storm. Even though Soros had already agreed to form an alliance, he still didn't know if this mission would be considered a success or a failure. However, there was one thing he knew for sure. It's over, it's all over, everything's over. Chapter 253. It didn't matter what the Holy Church planned. What was important was what the God of Holy Light planned from the very start. Replacing the power of Holy Light with the power of law had been my strategic plan. And if the new Lion King wanted to take over, he would naturally have to challenge the old Lion King. Otherwise, why would the other lions accept him? Even if the God of Holy Light had already lost his sense of self, he would still follow simple logic and view the rising Law faction as a future enemy. In that case, since we were destined to be enemies from the very start, why would we still form an alliance? Because the Holy War was here, and it was time for everyone to unite. That's right, the Holy War was here. All the true gods and true god churches of the Order faction had to unite. As the leader, the God of Holy Light had to lead by example. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to convince the masses. Since we can't become enemies, then let's temporarily become allies. Since the God of Holy Light's rigid logic wasn't able to say something like pacify the internal before dealing with external threats, then he would definitely invite the Order faction's new God of Law to form an alliance. All of this was within his expectations. As for whether or not we would fight each other after the war, wasn't it obvious? If we lost, there would be no future for us. If we won, we would definitely be the strongest and most prestigious of the survivors. All our previous agreements would become useless. Allies? Of course we agreed. Why wouldn't we? Those who are as close as brothers are also allies. Those who stab each other in the back are also allies. And we are obviously destined to be the latter. No matter what, the current Holy Light Church was the mainstream of human society. And if an enemy invaded, the biggest and strongest Holy Light family's leader would be the cannon fodder, the pillar of support. Since the God of Holy Light was able to rise to power in the previous Holy War, it was only natural that he would be forced to step down in this Holy War. Actually, it wasn't just us Law faction that had wild ambitions. The guardian gods of every species, the new god of war, god of smithing, god of commerce, god of fate, and so on, didn't they have wild ambitions? The god of Holy Light was far too powerful. He occupied more than half of the Holy Light's belief system and territory. From a certain standpoint, he had become the public enemy number one for both sides. In this situation, if he declared war on any order true god, he would definitely be implicated. Twin pillars of order? I'd be a fool to believe that. That was why I was 90% certain that no matter how indignant the Holy Church was, the God of Holy Light would send down a divine decree to suppress them. After all, we were now allies. And before the Holy War ended and the Holy Church declared war on us, we would have to restrain ourselves. What a joke. Living humans were actually being controlled by mechanical divine power servers, and they were even treating them as supreme existences. Even if something really did happen to the God of Holy Light, and he did everything he could to treat us as heretics, I would naturally have a backup plan, although that would likely be a complete fallout with him. But based on their past accomplishments in history, no matter how high a price they paid, I still didn't believe that they would be able to conquer the Northlands. After all, their crusade against the Northlands back in the day hadn't been able to obtain the final victory. They would also have to consider the consequences of forcing me to my limits. Another Yongye calamity wouldn't be impossible. When I heard a piece of news yesterday afternoon, I tossed aside the possibility of a life and death struggle. The Bardi Empire is expelling the Holy Church and its holy priests? I really don't know if I should be angry or happy. Judging from the current information, the Bardi Empire was probably facing a major problem. However, the Holy Church was probably the most worried. Any human mega-empire would be the cornerstone of all human society. Even if the entire Northlands was lost, it would still be nothing to the Holy Church. At the very least, the Northlands would be the focus of the Holy Church's attention before the war. Of course, if this conversation of mine were to spread, it would definitely shake the entire Holy Church's foundation. Perhaps there would even be a split between the original Holy Church and the Reformed Holy Church. Just like those fallen young Holy Knight, the younger one was, the easier it would be for their faith to be shaken. The lower the level, the greater the impact. Perhaps I should try promoting the Nanxiang Law Technical School in every country and have a few more classes for Holy Knight to become a Justice Knight. Yep, the first batch of students would be those unlucky youngsters. When a top-level company in the same industry encountered such a major problem, the happiest would probably be the other companies in the same industry. It was inevitable that a large number of elites would be lost, and there would be plenty of poaching. But in order to avoid a holy war, I would take things slowly. In terms of unlucky people, the most unlucky ones would probably be the Holy Church's diplomatic group. Cardinal Soros was the leader of this diplomatic group, yet he had made such a careless mistake. He would definitely have to take the blame for this to the very end. Not to mention a promotion, the lightest punishment would be to not be able to use any kind of position for the rest of his life. I felt that the most likely outcome would be to spend the rest of his life copying books in a library of records. If rumors were a fatal, slow-acting poison, then Ivla's fallen angel transformation would be a fatal wound that Soros couldn't escape from. For the Holy Church, a mixed-blood angel was incredibly precious. Not to mention that Ivla was a famous holy knight who was at least at the legend rank. Not only that, she was also young and beautiful, with both strength and beauty. Naturally, she became the Holy Church's living signboard and ambassador. In the past, Ivla's advertisements had basically made her into an epic hero. Perhaps ordinary people wouldn't know who Estrada was, but if the red-winged vulture Ivla was mentioned, it would be impossible for anyone to not know who she was. After all, She was one of the most famous holy knights of the current generation. Her heroic deeds had long since been compiled into books and sung by traveling poets, which were widely spread in every major city. However, the higher they were praised, the harder they would fall. The better the image of a pure and bright holy angel, the greater the negative effect on the entire holy church when she fell from grace in front of everyone. And right now, the holy church's major problem had become my minor problem. Why are you following me? I have nowhere else to go. Becoming a fallen angel was the same as becoming a demon. Both were transformations of one's species and power level. Since it wasn't brainwashing, and Ivla's memories were completely preserved, it was only natural that she would still be the same person. The Ivla in front of me had lost some of her aggressiveness, and she no longer looked at me with enmity. It was evident that her personality and abilities had drastically changed, but she was still the same unyielding female knight. I didn't know what to say as I looked at this black-winged angel who had a blank expression. This Ivla had changed beyond recognition. Judging from how she had casually believed me the other day and even revealed a bunch of secrets to me, this girl was probably the same as Diana, an idiot who fought for the sake of her beliefs. It was completely understandable that she was a muscular barbarian who added all her stats to her strength and stamina. However, she was an idiot. At the very least, she knew that she had become a stain on the Holy Church's reputation. In this city, due to the existence of the innocence barrier, as long as a fallen angel didn't commit any crimes, she would receive the same protection. The Holy Church probably wouldn't be able to touch her for the time being, but as long as she left, she would be hunted down to the very end. Having her leave with the Holy Church would be the same as sending her to the guillotine. As long as she left this city, it was likely that even Estrada would personally take action against her. It would only be a matter of time before she died. Avla also had a bitter expression. It had only been a few short hours since her faith had been shattered, and she had become a fallen angel. Her heart was probably in a mess right now, and she was only following me because she instinctively needed someone to rely on. I had a headache. Having an angel following behind me was indeed quite pleasing to the eye, but I felt that if I foolishly returned home, I would likely have an unfortunate future waiting for me. And if this angel's combat strength was also quite high, that would be even more troublesome. Since the Holy Light is unable to end this war, then what can stop it all? Don't you have any ideas? Are you just going to raise questions instead of solving the problem? That's so irresponsible of you. Not long after, I learned that Ivla's parents had both died to undead mages. Even their corpses had been desecrated, which was why she had an almost morbid hatred for the undead. This made her even more devout in the teachings of the Holy Light. Wait a moment. I'll give you a recommendation letter when I get back. You can go to Nanxiang and attend classes for 2 months, and you'll understand. Dear, we'll even provide you with a job. All right then. Nobody laughed at my joke. This angel only had a dark expression as she silently followed me. My schedule today was packed. If she wanted to follow me, then let her. I would simply find a place to give her a recommendation letter. I put on a black cape that I had prepared beforehand and tossed one over to Ivla. In such a chaotic celebration, it would be difficult for me to go anywhere if I used my own appearance. My first stop was the center of the Peace Plaza. Right now, there was a large number of stone monuments there. Every squad that was being inspected would have to pass by this monument and salute. After the military inspection ended, the monument was now filled with onlookers. I only quietly watched for a moment before intending to leave. What were those undead doing? Even though this wasn't Ivla's first time seeing these undead hanging out with the living, and how the living were mortals with no power whatsoever, talking and laughing loudly with their arms around each other's shoulders, Ivla's face was still filled with disbelief. In the center of all the onlookers was a group of high-level undead. Some of them were competing with each other, while others were writing and drawing on the stone monuments as if they were trying to inscribe something onto them. The Soul Comfort Monument records the names of all the brave warriors who died for the country. In the past 300 years, from a Mist Kingdom to Donglan, there have been quite a few of them. In the end, no matter how many you think about, you still haven't figured it all out. However, A voice reminded me of the truth. No, they've already completed their task of remembering. Now, they're trying to inscribe their names onto the monument. They've already fought several dozen battles over who should be inscribed first. The inexplicable connection made the demon hound notice my arrival, but Bastet's explanation made me even more astonished. The undead were trying to inscribe their names onto the soul comfort monument? Yep, although it was quite strange from a certain standpoint, it wasn't wrong. They had indeed died in battle for the sake of their country and their species, so they were definitely heroes. Naturally, they had the right to be inscribed. But as I watched them jumping around, fighting against each other for the sake of having their names placed first, why did I feel so awkward? This was no different from a dead person crawling up from the ground to write their own epitaph. Why didn't they inscribe it earlier? There should still be enough time. Isn't there a procedure for this military parade? We have to salute the Soul Comfort Monument. Everyone says that it's strange for them to salute themselves, so they delayed it. Isn't it strange for them to inscribe their own epitaph? I felt rather helpless as I observed the group of obsidian stone monuments not far away from me. Originally, I had intended to imitate a certain monument with a single sign for everything. But very quickly, when Timir read out the names of the entire aerial cavalry squadron and stared at me with a pleading gaze, I discovered that one soul comfort monument probably wasn't enough. In the end, as expected, all the high-level undead were doing their best to recall their names. More and more names were written, and 37 10-meter-tall soul comfort monuments were erected. Looking at this situation, it seemed that this still wasn't enough. Why are they fighting over a spot at the front? Perhaps it was because her species had already been converted, but for the first time, Ivla expressed her curiosity about this species. Bastion glanced strangely at the black-clothed man in front of him, but under my signal, he still responded. That's for the honor of warriors. No one is willing to fall behind. Then why not just inscribe their names at the very front? That's also for the honor of warriors. Compared to the warriors who are already in eternal sleep, we're already far too fortunate. How could we possibly fight with those fellows? After he finished speaking, there was a long silence. Bastion seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly added, "Don't worry. No matter how they fight over it, we've already reserved the number 1 spot. That spot belongs to you. Only you are suitable for the highest spot." All right, I finally discovered that there was something more ridiculous than a dead person writing their own epitaph. It was a living person writing their own epitaph. I'm still alive. There's no need. Chapter 254. I put on my hood and wandered around aimlessly in the crowd. I looked at the people celebrating in front of me and casually took a sip of wine. I seemed to be infected by the celebratory atmosphere, and my mood became better without me even realizing it. Ivla had already left. It was rare for me to be in such a good mood today, so I didn't intend to waste my energy on an outsider. Angels were all inflexible, and it would be impossible to communicate with them right now. I would first go to Nanxiang for a few months before talking to them. I had already entered the Wood City district. This was also the most prosperous business district in Definder. At this moment, there were all sorts of small shops on the roadside. Some sold snacks, some sold jewelry, and there were even quite a few war memorials. The moment I entered the market, a cute, golden-haired little girl suddenly appeared beside me. She madly ran to the roadside stalls and started looking for a new snack stall. Her long blonde hair almost reached the ground. Heloise, who was becoming more and more gluttonous, had a barbecue skewer in one hand and smoked fish in the other. She even had a chicken drumstick dangling from her mouth. Soon, the cute and noble princess clothes had become a greasy rag, and her red face had become a tabby cat. Ever since Heloise had regained her appetite and sense of taste, she had evolved like a super glutton. Fortunately, most of the time, she only tasted food. Although her little mouth was constantly moving, she didn't eat much. That was the only way she wouldn't let the silly cat on my head get fatter and fatter. No matter how much I eat, I won't get fat. At most, I'll just share my nutrition with my children and let them get fat. I'll forever be a single-digit beautiful witch. Ah, Roland, look over there. What's that? While making sarcastic remarks that would infuriate all women, She laughed as she jumped and pointed at the street in front of her. The slowly moving flower parade seemed to have completed its first round of parade. In human countries, flower parade was a tradition. However, unlike the rich countries in the Central Plains, which used flowers, beauties, gold, and artwork to decorate their flower parade, the flower parade in the Northlands usually didn't have any flowers. However, the Northlands had the highest ice sculpting technology. Myths, epics, heroes, and even real people could be turned into vivid ice sculptures. A few colorful lights were lit in between the ice sculptures, and the colorless ice sculptures came alive in the flowing lights. The distortion of light and the reflection of magic made those lively characters seem to come alive. Of course, if that was all there was to it, it would be a little boring. After all, every type of float had their own characteristics and functions. For example, the largest bakery chain in the city, Asa Bakery, used ice sculptures to make all kinds of fancy desserts, which were vivid and attractive. There was even a shopkeeper who was distributing bread discount rolls. It seemed that the advertisements were scattered along the road. Dessert, banana boat, strawberry sundae, orange custard, fancy pink rolls. All right, looking at this Banshee Queen who snatched a bunch of coupons, I could only smile helplessly. Looks like there will be a lot more breadcrumbs in my house in the near future. The Philip Carriage Company's flower parade was made into a pumpkin carriage from a fairy tale. The horses that pulled the carriage were dressed as mice. However, the carvings on the pumpkin shell and the decorations on the carriage were even more exquisite and beautiful than a real carriage. The gigantic carriage didn't shake at all, fully displaying the astonishing craftsmanship of the craftsmen. The Golden Peak Tailor Shop's flower parade became a stage for the models to show off their new clothes. It was a pitiful world of ice and snow. All the young girls' faces were pale from the cold, but they were still doing their best to show off their dresses and casual clothes that didn't have much material. In the past, even if it was New Year's, this place would always be cold and empty. But as Donglan became more and more prosperous, more and more people chose to return here. Many major merchants also invested in this place. These three merchants weren't originally Donglan's local merchants, so they took advantage of this opportunity to promote themselves. Even a newly established town security didn't give up on such an important opportunity to promote themselves. Momo was still showing off their new uniforms on the flower parade. The sound of whips filled the air, and the snow eagle that represented the sinners was whipped into pieces, causing snow to fly everywhere. It was quite a painful sight to see, but it seemed that this also attracted quite a few strange followers. And with so many flower parade cars, there were naturally some special ones as well. For example, there was a certain alliance with a lot of energy, especially those goblin engineers who were full of firepower. 1, 2, 3. Learn how to use an excavator. Come to the West Town Mechanical Engineering School. It was a heavy goblin harvester, and it was currently showing off its new product, the safety excavator. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, alright, it was probably showing off the safety brand of gunpowder. No matter if it was the audience or the workers themselves, they were already used to it. They stood up and sent the unlucky burnt person to a priest, while the others started looking for usable parts and started assembling the excavator on the spot. Soon, a handsome jet-powered motorcycle appeared on top of the flower parade in a pile of oil stains and broken parts. The excavator driver from earlier rode the motorcycle and demonstrated all sorts of tricks. He then started showing off his skilled driving skills and the motorcycle's super horsepower. As expected, once you learned how to drive an excavator, you could drive anything. 1, 2, 3. Come to the West City Mechanical Engineering School to learn all the tricks and tricks on a jet-powered motorcycle. All right then, there were actually people applauding. This was much better than any magic trick or performance. From a certain standpoint, if they didn't have the habit of viewing explosions as a daily occurrence, and most importantly, if they didn't have the vitality of a cockroach, it would be impossible for them to have such high achievements in the field of goblin engineering. In that case, for their persistence and shamelessness, I should give them 32 likes. I'll inform the town security to come and arrest them later. At the very least, their perseverance was quite admirable. You actually dare to come so close? Didn't you hear? Their first performance was a combination of 5 construction machines. When combined, they're even taller than the city walls. Now, all that's left from the explosion is the excavator with the right hand, and you actually dare to come so close? Asterisk boom. Asterisk the sound of explosions and flames behind them served as the best evidence for this warm-hearted person. In an instant, everyone retreated in unison, clearing the area around the flower parade car. However, the miraculous scene from earlier replayed itself once again. Even though the excavator had been reduced to dust, the goblin engineers still didn't give up. Amidst the sound of oil and wrenches, a gnome electric saw with clacking gears was the first to be assembled. The gnome driver stood up again and immediately used that clacking saw to cut off a piece of wood. And so, I heard those familiar shouts in unison again. 3, 2, 1. Learn how to cut wood. Come to the West City Mechanical Engineering School. From a gigantic robot to an excavator, then to a motorcycle, and finally to a chainsaw. It's like dismembering a corpse. First, it's the human, then the right hand, then the index finger, and finally the fingernail. Please let that chainsaw go. He's the only child left in his family. How pitiful. All right, then, for the sake of that pitiful survivor, I immediately called for help. Hey, Eliza, help me contact the town security. Tell them that there's a flower parade car in the safety sign. I didn't need to say anything else. Soon, 2 Dark Elf Knights team appeared at the corner of the street. Without saying anything else, the gnomes picked up the broken pieces and fled. And so, the first empty flower parade car appeared. However, the strange thing was that many people threw snow-white stones onto it. What's this? Everyone can receive 3 votes for the best flower parade. If you like that flower parade car, you can vote for whoever has the most stones on that flower parade car. The prizes are quite generous. Eliza's familiar voice came from behind me. Before I knew it, she had already arrived. I looked around and saw that there were already quite a few small white stones beside the flower parade cars. So it's sympathy votes. Right, who's in the lead now? The Gentleman Alliance's other flower parade car is in the top 3. Look, it's that one. All right, then. I only needed one glance to understand what was going on. That flower parade car was quite simple. There was only a large sign hanging on it. If you have a grudge, take revenge. If you don't have a grudge against me, you can also take it out if you don't like it. There were a few unlucky fellows tied to the sign. Crazy clothes, shredding demon. Streaking eagle king. Fake medicine dealer. Explosion maniac. Professional freeloader. These unlucky fellows had obviously been sold out by their peers. They had ridiculously high popularity and enjoyed the citizens' warm greetings. However, considering that they were either legends or top-level gold rank, the stones thrown by ordinary people were actually quite ineffective against them. Their pitiful screams were probably just to entice the attackers to throw more votes. One was willing to fight, and the attacker was happy. The other was willing to be beaten, and the attacker was also happy. Yep, let's just assume that they were willing. The speed at which they collected the stones was already quite astonishing. Asterisk crack. Asterisk. Haha, look, Eliza, that unlucky fellow. Who's so wicked as to smash an ink bottle on Ingo's head? Originally, the Absolute Gentleman Alliance was going to participate in the parade as well. However, considering their neutral status as mercenaries, as well as their future expansion plans, it wasn't suitable for them to be too heavily affiliated with the government. That was why I asked them to avoid suspicion. I didn't expect them to be so playful. Whose idea was that? How sarcastic. After I finished laughing, I casually asked. Nobody. I heard that during the discussion, Cassio said, it's fine as long as Brother Bayfong is here. He can just go up and walk around. With his popularity, he'll be able to win. Then, they estimated that if Bayfong was here, with his current reputation, as long as he didn't get beaten to death, he really would be able to win. Then, they thought that since quality wasn't enough, they should make up for it with quantity. And so, those unlucky fellows went up, and I never expected that the results would be so good. However, my attention was no longer on the parade. Not far away, someone had actually made a float with a statue of the twin stars on it. Many passers-by silently placed their stones on the float. Judging by how the stones were piled up into a small mountain, it seemed that the results were even better than the float with a target. This is a float made by the royal family. I heard that Princess Renee personally made this statue. I couldn't help but fall into deep thought as I looked at the twin star statues that were becoming more and more familiar. It was rare for Heloise to show concern for her other self. "Oh, today is your birthday, but is it also that person's birthday? But if you're always so tense, you'll break sooner or later. Let go of your messy thoughts and have fun today." I couldn't help but laugh when I heard this. "You're overthinking things. I just feel that if we brothers are compared, I'm indeed more handsome. But why is it that we're so far apart in terms of popularity with women?" Yep, of course I wouldn't say the second half of what I said, which was rather embarrassing. But it seemed that just the first half was enough to make Harloise and Harloise look down on me. So I immediately changed the topic. Right, since that float is in third place, the royal family's float should be in the top 3 as well. What's the other float that's in front of it? Eliza's expression suddenly became rather subtle when she heard this. Take a look for yourself. The one in the southwest. Yes, that's where the Shiloh Empire is. Their death float. From a certain standpoint, it's the same type of float as the Gentleman Alliance. Love, courage, and hope. Love and peace. With just a glance, I was almost blinded by the oily and shiny muscles. Omar's aerobics were becoming more and more explosive, but at the very least, he should wear more clothes. You guys aren't Eagle Storm's worshippers, are you? And when I discovered that Gria's abnormally scary and penetrating voice was accompanying Omar's dance, I didn't say anything else and immediately left. For the sake of everyone's lives, let's give first place to them. Chapter 255. Right now, it was already noon on the second day of the celebration. The next day's activities had already been scheduled, but I had only just woken up. Last night, I was dragged into drinking by Little Red, Adam, and the others, and ended up fooling around the entire night. The result of being drunk and unable to sleep the entire night was that my head was now hurting like crazy. Unfortunately, as the organizer of the celebration, the documents in my office were piling up like a mountain. In the end, I was still unable to escape and was caught red-handed by Eliza. The float parade that was competing to see who was the most despised had already ended. The victors were the random performers that the Shiloh Empire had sent to participate in the parade. Their muscle-bound performance combined with the sound of death instantly defeated everyone else. By the time they reached the end, the float had already become a moving mountain of broken rocks, and no one could be seen anymore. So many people actually liked my singing. As expected, art doesn't discriminate between races or countries. Last time, it was my stage fright that caused me to be unable to perform well. Yep, let's hold a performance at the plaza next week. Truly, truly so passionate. I am so moved. I've decided that every day I'm into Finder. Omar's gym will be open to everyone for free. Those who want to learn fitness and square dancing from me, come early tomorrow at 6 in the morning. Let's do it at the Peace Day Plaza. The news spread, and in just one afternoon, the housing prices and rentals around the plaza dropped by a third. It would seem that square dancing and vagrant singers were the same, no matter what. Afterwards, the complaints I received piled up into a mountain. Hurry up and stop that evil banshee's howl. On my head. On my corium dog eyes. I'm blind. They're all blind. I'll burn the adulterous couple to death, but I won't burn true love. This is a perfect match. Aw, let's be honest. Hurry up and pair them together. Don't let them come out and harm others. Chop off my hand. I want to chop off my hand. Looks like there's something strange mixed in. Let's not delve into it. Although there were a lot of complaints, there were also some interesting reports. One interesting undead uncle. He even knows how to fly high. With Omar's arm strength, it's no problem for him to fly several dozen meters high. But, according to reports, many of the children's parents were scared stiff. None of the notes are in tune. This is the first time I'm feeling ashamed of being an elf. Can I ask that undead lord to stop ruining the reputation of the elves who are good at singing? It's very interesting. I hope that such an event will be held again next year. I'm already thinking about next year's float. Although I complain a lot, it wasn't all for naught. At the very least, I was a high-level undead who retained my flaws and personal emotions, which made me feel more human. This helped me close the distance between myself and Roland. Right now, I didn't have the time to care about such things. A new problem was right in front of me. Due to a certain person's arbitrary actions, we suddenly added the Death Crown amusement park, the Big Belly King competition, and more than 20 other events. Not only that, there were far more people than expected. The scale of the celebration's various activities also far exceeded our expectations. The result is that our finances are in the red, even though it's only the afternoon of the second day. We've exceeded our budget by 2 million gold coins. If you can't think of a solution as soon as possible, I'm afraid that we'll have to use the funds for next spring city construction or the salaries of the royalty's employees. I personally recommend that you shorten the celebrations programs. That's the best way to solve this problem. Ah, that familiar cold frown. The gaze beneath the gold-rimmed glasses seemed to be able to speak. That's enough. Don't make any more new programs. This birthday party is already annoying enough. Let's take a break. All right then. So Eliza had directly said it out loud. Although what she said seemed quite reasonable, well said, but it's meaningless. Don't even think about it. Nobody will be able to stop me from taking a vacation. This celebrations program schedule has already been scheduled until next month. I gritted my teeth and insisted on my own opinion while waiting for Eliza's fierce retort. But suddenly, the demon girl adjusted her glasses, causing her iceberg to thaw. She exited her ghost granny mode and actually nodded. Fine, then let's think of a solution together. At the very least, let's figure out how to use the celebrations funds in the near future. Why did she suddenly become so easy to talk to? Could it be that she's plotting something? By the way, I no longer have an undying body. Let's just forget about exploding toilets and shoe cabinet cutters. I definitely wouldn't fall for her tricks again. Every time Eliza was about to explode in anger, she would suddenly become friendly with me in order to lower my guard. But the gentler she was, the more deadly her revenge would be. Eliza fell silent upon hearing this. She silently looked at me for quite a while, to the point where I felt a chill run down my spine. Only then did she continue speaking. It seems that you can't blame everything on me. I seem to have gone overboard as well. No, since you're the one who taught me, it's still your fault. It's all your fault. But this time, relax, I don't have any extra plans. Yep, not for the time being. Eliza shook her head. She seemed to be hesitating. I'm sorry. Although I don't know how I offended you, it's all my fault. Please let go of the children that you're still holding captive. Since she wasn't directly making trouble for me, then she would definitely take revenge on me somewhere else. Thinking about the treasures that were still in my evil clutches, I decisively chose to surrender. No, it seems that I'm the one who needs to reflect on myself. I finally remember now. In the past, every year around this time, you would go out by yourself and play pranks. You would only return home in the middle of the night, and you would always come back looking for trouble. So this is how you celebrate your birthday? Making others unhappy in exchange for your own temporary happiness? Is it really that lonely? I really apologize for being careless. There's no such thing. Don't apologize, and don't look at me with such a pitiful expression. I'm not a lonely old man that people dislike and forget my birthday. I won't light candles and eat cake by myself, nor will I vent my anger on others just because everyone forgets my birthday. This time, it was Eliza's turn to be astonished. Her random guess turned out to be true. So it's true. You're so childish. You tricked me. Now that I was in a state of chaos, it was time for me to calm down. Lacking money would be a huge problem. How about I try to extort some money from the Holy Church? No matter what, I'm allies with their boss, and he even gave me the title of saint. It shouldn't be too difficult to exchange for some money, right? Do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? Your current reputation among the Holy Church's job class has reached a certain level. Just go to any holy church and say that Roland is here, and more than 10 priests and Holy Knight will jump out to beat you up. Besides, the fact that you rejected the Holy Church's title of saint has already spread throughout the entire city. Most people say that you don't know what's good for you and that you wasted such a good opportunity. As Eliza spoke, she nodded in satisfaction. It was evident that Eliza was one of the many people who felt that it would be much more convenient for her if she had the title of saint. However, it was evident that Roland was a rather cool-headed person most of the time. He would immediately overheat the moment he met the Holy Church. It was difficult to take back a decision that had already been made. The past was meaningless. It was better to look forward. And so Eliza spoke. But some people admire your courage for daring to humiliate the Holy Church. You're going to go look for them at this time? Do you intend to lower your head and admit your mistakes, or continue to provoke them? If it's the former, we all know about your shameless habits, so please stop trying to lower your limits. If it's the latter, you might as well just start a war. So, you're still going to cause trouble. I opened my mouth but didn't say anything in the end. If I could earn money by lowering my head, then there was no harm in doing so. However, based on my understanding of my taunting abilities, no matter what I originally intended to do, there was a 99% chance that the latter would happen. How's your arms deal going? Wasn't it quite successful? An auction isn't something that can be done in a short period of time. If we don't whet everyone's appetite, how will we be able to sell them for a good price? Their spies should be all over the city right now. When they finally find some clues, but find nothing, that's when we'll make a bid. Aren't you afraid that they'll really obtain your technology? That's basically impossible. I've had Bastion personally guard the technicians area. Everyone who enters and exits has to be approved, so outsiders won't be able to enter at all. And if they want to find the real thing, even I can't find it. So how will they possibly find it? It wasn't that I didn't want to show off my new magical engineering products during the military parade, but in the last battle, I had basically lost all of my finished products. The Roland Titans had all been destroyed, and the final explosion was quite eye-catching. The Train King had also exploded, killing many beastmen in the process, and the small airship hadn't returned either. I should say that is expected of a product that the gnomes had interfered with. Why did everything seem to end with an explosion? Next time, let's not install a self-destruct button. I feel like as long as I design this, it'll be used sooner or later. It'll be just like saying, although the enemy is strong, at least I'm confident that I can take them down with me. That's so unlucky. Anyone who says such a thing will instantly go from a supporting character to cannon fodder, and they'll probably end up killing themselves in the explosion. The more I said, the more I felt like I was touching upon the truth. There's only one truth. I simply wanted to shout out that line. All right, let's be serious. Let's analyze this from your mental state. There's a red button placed in front of you every day, and even though there's an arrow telling you not to press it, the more you don't want to press it, the more you want to press it. In the end, you don't have a chance, and you can't resist the temptation. Do you press it? Or do you press it with both hands? Or do you forcefully press it with both hands? Please don't compare your habitual weakness to those brave warriors who sacrifice themselves for justice. If those engineers and pilots who are currently working overtime heard what you said, they'd definitely all go on strike. At that time, you'd even have to ask for a raise and keep them, which would be so troublesome. Right, where's my salary? I don't think I've ever received a salary from you. A good boss would have to get used to acting dumb about unimportant things. At the very least, they would have to get used to ignoring their subordinates' complaints and emotions. And so, I took a sip of tea and looked outside. Eliza, your red tea is getting better and better. The weather today is quite nice. Thank you for your praise. But that's green tea I specially prepared for you, and the weather isn't nice at all. It's raining and snowing outside. Even if you're just being perfunctory, please show some sincerity. We both knew that since we couldn't solve it right now, let's just leave it for now. Oh, I remember now. Adam said he was going to play tennis today. It should be almost time, so we should hurry up and head out. Is it the killer tennis tournament that you've already arranged a partner for? I heard that your partner is a beauty who admires you. She even said that her measurements are 110, 80,100, and she has a big butt and a tall figure. She is far better than me in all aspects. I'm just a flat plate. All right, I faintly understood why I was dragged out of bed in the morning. The familiar cold glint in her eyes clearly indicated that someone was already on the verge of going berserk. Cough, cough, don't speak nonsense. How could that be? I'm a good person, so how could I possibly know who's spreading rumors? It's definitely a bastard who likes to lie. Yep, bastard, you drank too much yesterday and even bragged about it for half the night. You don't remember anything at all? Roland, your luck with women isn't bad. I opened my mouth wide, but when I remembered the description that Adam gave me yesterday, how could I let go of such a good opportunity? Thus, in the next moment, I suddenly stood up, gulped down the black tea, turned around, and ran. Even if I have to die, I have to play to my heart's content before dying. I'm going out. Don't wait for me for dinner tonight. Seeing that Eliza didn't follow, I let out a sigh of relief, but Eliza already revealed a cold smile behind my back. Oomph. As expected, you didn't wake up. You drank too much yesterday, to the point that you're stupid enough to even believe Adam's words. You guys can just screw each other to death. Very quickly, I met the legendary beauty on the newly built tennis court. Adam, is this the beauty you were talking about? Of course, look at that face, an oval face, small red lips, delicate and picturesque. Of course she's a beauty. Big butt and a tall figure. Of course, look at those curves, the front and the back. Look at those muscles, they're so bouncy, they're so perfect. Look at those bulging chest muscles. It's a perfect figure that can only be found in a sculpture. All right, I more or less understood. I was screwed over by this bastard again. Little Red, who was beside me, was laughing so hard that she was bending over. Even Marguerite was looking at me with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. Just continue making things up. Admire me? Of course. Is there a son who doesn't admire his father? Yep, I forgot to tell you that it's him, not her. Yep, the beauty in front of me was the current ruler of Shiloh, but at this moment, he was wearing a rather ridiculous white miniskirt and was curiously playing with a tennis racket. Seeing that I had arrived, he was delighted, but then he calmed down. Father, I've long wanted to find a chance to talk to you alone, not only about Shiloh, but also about the death plane. Chapter 256. While Roland was worrying about how to communicate with his own child, someone else was thinking about the past. Hey, Heloise, do you know how Roland would have responded? That time? That time when we forced him into a corner on stage. If it wasn't for Little Red helping him out, how would he have responded? How would I know? I don't believe that he'll be able to hide the telepathic connection between his magical pet and its master. If you tell me, I'll guarantee that I'll give you 100 free shopping vouchers, and you'll be able to eat to your heart's content at every gourmet restaurant. Also, I'll give you 3 months' worth of special desserts made by the head chef. If you want, I'll even give you a cat teaser stick, a ball of yarn, and cat litter. What do you take me for? I don't want cat litter, but I want special candies and desserts. I want special desserts made by the head chef, meow. Would he accept the cat teaser stick and ball of yarn just like that? Elisa was speechless as she looked at the black cat that was licking its front paws. The saying that the physical body would affect the soul did make sense, but to be able to raise the lonely and arrogant banshee queen into a house cat, I'm afraid that I'm the only one who could do it. However, one should never count on a pet cat's loyalty. With enough temptation, these elegant little furry cuties would have no side at all. They would unhesitatingly forget about their former master in front of a large amount of canned cat food. Meow. Actually, I think it's better that you don't know. Or perhaps I should say that you've already guessed it. So, it's the answer after all. Yep, he was originally going to choose you, but Amelia probably did something that changed the words he was about to say. Everyone here is my most trusted companion, my closest family, and I don't like any of you. Which one do you think is easier to accept? There's nothing hard to accept. I already expected it. It'll be the same result as 2 years ago. I've already lived together with Roland for over 100 years, so how could I not know what his personality is like? She coldly said that she didn't care, but her tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheeks. It would seem that being logical was one thing, but Eliza's heart was unable to accept it. The furious young girl gently caressed the magical ruby in her hand. A fire was lit in a faraway storage room, and some precious books were burned to nothingness. If a certain someone knew about this, he would probably also cry tears of regret. No, those children are innocent. Well, it seemed like someone's wailing had transcended the limits of time and space. Sure enough, he's right. When you're unhappy, make others unhappy as well. Sharing the burden will make you feel better. She gently wiped away her tears and put on her glasses again. The forever calm Eliza Sama had returned. Only, not making any progress to speak of was far from the worst result. Wasn't it just wasting time? Who was scared of who? The time of an undying being was long enough. Marguerite spent more than 100 years, so he would just spend 200. Isn't it just 200 years? This old lady is waiting. I should say that they are truly worthy of being Adam's brothers. That one is stubborn, while this one is a blockhead who can't see the light of day. Listening to Eliza's resentment, Heloise transformed into her human form and casually took out a lollipop from her pocket. She seemed to be a little hesitant, but she still said in the end, "Eliza, what do you think a demigod is? Below the gods, mortals are the strongest." What an interesting saying. Roland must have taught you this. There's no need to refute me. I don't think you can answer this question. Even if your true body has truly reached the realm of gods, you're actually a primary god similar to the power of elemental gods and archdemons. Their paths have already been decided the moment they were born. I'm afraid you know very little about the power levels of mortals. Eliza was speechless. Although she had become a demon lord in a single step, she had taken the old path of demons, relying on devouring and instinctive evolution. She didn't have a deep understanding of the path of cultivation that she had to take one step at a time. She knew very little about things after saint rank. All ranks only represent the degree of progress in a certain field. That's why it's perfectly normal for a saint rank warrior to lose to a legend rank mage. The difficulty of progress between the two can't be compared at all. It's also perfectly normal for a saint rank dragon to defeat a human who had just reached the level of demigod. They walked in two different directions from the very beginning. As for demigods, after pausing for a moment, Heloise finally spoke. The concept of demigods doesn't exist in the first place. It can be said that there are no demigods in this world. Although she said something that might cause controversy, Eliza nodded. After all, Roland had said something similar before. Every rank has its own characteristics. The gold rank is about finding your own path. The legend rank is about carving your own path into a soul imprint. The saint rank represents breaking away from the limits of mortals and connecting your soul imprint to the world. You can begin to change the world around you. The best of them can even form their own small world, soul world. Although she didn't know why Heloise would mention this, Eliza had heard Roland mention this before. That was why she only listened quietly. Above the saint rank is the so-called myth rank. At this rank, they've already figured out the existence of the concept of existence from their soul imprint and integrated it into their own development. The concept of existence is rather difficult to understand. However, you can understand it as a natural talent ability that allows you to have absolute control over fire. It's an improved version of your soul imprint, but it's more convenient to use and transform it into actual combat strength. Some individuals attach their concept of existence to their physical bodies, transforming their physical bodies into their own independent small world that won't be destroyed for tens of thousands of years. Adam is such an individual. Some use their soul world to corrode reality, turning the fake into reality. Roland is such an individual. Some even directly materialize their soul world, transforming it into their own indestructible divine weapon. That's how many legend-ranked and myth-ranked divine weapons were created. Actually, in order to better research and control their own concept of existence, most myth-ranked individuals would materialize their concept. Some would casually attach their concept to their personal weapons that they were most familiar with. The end result was that many ordinary weapons became legendary myth-ranked weapons. Myth-ranked weapons were typically created by the creator of the myth-ranked weapon. However, the original owner of the myth-ranked weapon had died in battle, and the concept of existence had dissipated. The myth-ranked weapon would be far less difficult to deal with than the myth-ranked weapon in the original owner's hands. There are thousands of paths with thousands of choices. There's always a limit to how far one can go. It's likely that it's already been determined long ago. Since the myth-ranked rank is far too long, it's split into 3 parts. One of them is known as the 3 heavy doors. Not a single door is easy to pass, and so-called semi-gods are existences that have passed the 3 heavy doors. Actually, it's meaningless to go any higher. They've already refined their concept of existence to the point where it's comparable to divine concepts and divine powers. That's why, if we don't count the shameless abilities of the true gods, semi-gods might not even be weaker than the true gods. However, if we don't look at the results, there's still a huge difference even among semi-gods. Marguerite and Adam can easily kill Marcelet, while Roland at his peak can easily kill both Marguerite and Adam. At this point, Heloise revealed a nostalgic expression. She thought back to how she had also been stuck at the 3 heavy doors in the past. She was limited by her undead body and was unable to reach the peak for a long time. Everyone's choices are difficult to determine, but if the path they chose was only half a path with no end in sight, it's likely that no matter how hard they try, they won't be able to take another step forward. At the very least, as far as I know, the reason why there are no semi-gods among the undead in this world is because in the current low magic era, the undead can't choose any concepts that can support them. The undead are the dead. The concepts they can choose must be compatible with their physical bodies. In that case, 99% of them will be related to the domain of death. In order to reach the final door, it's likely that they'll have to use plagues and death to destroy their own countries. They'll have to use countless corpses to test their own path and create their own myth or legend. Eliza nodded. In the records of the Chaos Abyss, the birth of the immemorial undead emperors also represented an endless undead calamity. But right now, it's relatively peaceful. If anyone dares to do such a thing, the gods will probably come directly to you for a chat. Plus, the low magic era has created a long period of growth. It's always been common knowledge that there are no undead emperors in recent times. But there's always an exception to everything. There's one person who managed to find a way out from a dead end. Should I say that it was to be expected of Heloise, the omniscient one? While everyone treated it as common knowledge that it was impossible for the undead to become semi-gods, Heloise had discovered the reason why it was impossible. Is it Roland? But didn't he use that so-called system to cheat? Aha! That's something you don't know about. I've interacted with that system before. It's similar to the wishing spell, a pure equivalent exchange. It has to follow the laws of causality, and everything it does has to be within the natural laws of the world. You can completely view it as Roland's personal natural talent. If Roland didn't have a semi-god's foundational power, he would have instantly fallen off the moment he reached that level. It's probably because he's so reliant on his system that he doesn't even understand his own concept of existence. Before, I was quite curious as to how he managed to reach such a level without even knowing it. But when I saw the existence of that world of ice and snow, I discovered that his concept of existence was a concept that had never existed in this world before: creation. Upon hearing this, Eliza came to a sudden realization. As the pursuers of the truth of the world, mages would need to learn and master magical knowledge and formulas in order to improve their own power levels. They would need to research new things and make progress in their own field of research. A top-level archmage would be an expert in their own field of research. His elemental perception is in the negative. Although his undead magic isn't bad, the amount of time he needs to learn is only so. If he only relied on that, he would at most be a saint rank. What he should truly be proud of is the miraculous field that he created from nothing: undead construction. He used this ability to break through the 3 great doors and reach semi-god. The 7 deadly sins. That's right, the 7 deadly sins are the most perfect undead creations. They have their own sense of self and are independent existences. They even have the desires of the living. The most important part is that they're actually able to break free from their creator's restrictions and grow and evolve on their own. If I'm not wrong, after the 7 deadly sins evolve to the limit, they'll be able to fight against a true god. How are they undead? Apart from the fact that they haven't broken through the boundary between life and death, they're no different from creating a new gold tribe. Not only that, recently, he helped me break through this barrier. He already has the ability to break through the boundary between life and death. He's already raised his own concept of creation to the level of creation. At this point, Eliza could guess why Heloise was telling her all this. How is this possible? How is it impossible? Gluttony, ah dang, is the most obvious example. A weak little abomination only took 300 years to kill a semi-god. Omar, who was just born a few years ago, also has the ability to maintain his pride in front of the gods. Not only that, his evolution hasn't reached its end yet. But miracles usually come with a heavy price. The heavy price that the 7 deadly sins have to pay can only be borne by the Creator. Heloise was quite vexed at the fact that it had already involved herself. Why are there only the 7 deadly sins? That's because every single deadly sin is a part of Roland. When he was creating and naming them, he unknowingly cut out a piece of his own soul and gave it to the 7 deadly sins. Roland's hatred for his country and his family created the furious Bastion. His desire to eat and his desire to become stronger created the gluttony, ah dang. His desire for order and power created the supreme, undead King Omar. Eliza revealed a contemplative expression. Finally, under the reality that was gradually being verified, she could only nod her head helplessly. I think I understand. But some things can't be regained, even if they're lost. The current Roland views revenge as meaningless, and he doesn't have much hope for becoming stronger. He views power and status as nothing more than a joke. Perhaps he's been affected as well, and the birth of me and envy was the same. But Roland probably realized that something was wrong with the situation. He didn't directly create anything and instead used us as raw materials, which also saved his own energy consumption. It's not wrong for Omar to view him as his father. Ethically speaking, it makes perfect sense, but don't expect me to view him as my father, much less call him out. Heloise had a bitter expression as well. She had only recently received this conclusion. But suddenly going from senior to a junior, although it felt good to have a family, she didn't know how to deal with it. That was why she didn't even tell Roland about this conclusion. The 7 deadly sins all originate from Roland. If he becomes a main god, the 7 deadly sins that are inextricably linked to him will become follower gods and child gods. There can only be 7 deadly sins because Roland only has 7 deadly sins, so he can only cut them into 7 pieces. And that so-called system kept warning Roland not to create undead creatures. It was likely that it had discovered something. Roland and the 7 deadly sins are his true semi-god power. At his peak, even a true god would have to avoid him. He definitely didn't rely on his personal combat strength. Now that I mention this, you should know why I'm telling you all this. Lust. You can also call it overflowing love. Although I don't know if it exists, nor do I know if it's a person or an object. If it really exists, it's the earliest existence of the 7 deadly sins. And no matter how talented Roland is at creating things, he was probably only at the peak of legend back then. It's possible that he paid even more to create a miracle that even a semi-god can't achieve. Paid even more? If he cut off his own love, wouldn't that make him an existence that couldn't understand love? Eliza was speechless. Didn't that mean that no matter how hard she tried, that blockhead wouldn't understand? That idiot. That's right. Apart from idiot, how else could she describe him? In a way, this was the result of a standard mage experiment. Although he obtained the desired result, he had unknowingly paid several times more than he gained. This was yet another unprofitable transaction. Can it be fixed? Personally, I think it's possible. I can faintly sense the connection between us. As long as the 7 deadly sins are by his side, they'll instinctively return the excess sins and emotions to him, making his personality more normal and stable. And I heard some news that he had a lover in his second life. Eliza was so shocked that she opened her mouth wide. Why didn't Roland mention anything about this at all? If it was true, he would have bragged about it to everyone long ago. I learned about it from Amelia. She only heard about it at the time, and it seems that they broke up in the end. It's also said that his second death had something to do with it. But I also indirectly mentioned it to Roland, but he doesn't seem to remember anything at all. Even his library of memories doesn't have any records of it. I'm afraid that he sealed his memories and feelings when he was creating this thing. It's also possible that he created things in order to forget about his past. If that was an incredibly failed first love, I think that idiot could have done it. It's also possible that he thought that love would distract him from his desire for revenge and motivation to move forward. She stared at each other, and finally, she could only sigh helplessly. That idiot is practically incurable. That idiot is so worrisome. Chapter 257. Truly insane people will never know that they're insane. Rather than believing that they're the only abnormal one, they'd rather believe that the entire world has gone insane and that they're the only normal person. By Roland. In the royal palace, formal negotiations with the Shiloh Empire's envoy were ongoing. However, the most important matters would have to be discussed in private. Countless trivial details and underhanded deals had to be arranged under the cover of night. The Shiloh Empire was the only undead country in the world. Joining the Mist Alliance was already expected, but it would be meaningless if it was only in name. The alliance would deepen the relationship between the two countries, but how to deepen it, all the complicated details would have to be discussed in person by the core members of both countries. Business, trade, diplomatic, military, and more than 30 other agreements have been signed. And this was only the beginning. Without all sorts of convenient and regular channels of communication, without everyone being united, how could it possibly be called an alliance? The future Mist Alliance would be incredibly large, but that didn't mean that all the allied countries would be united in every situation. After all, every country would have their own reasons for wanting to join the Mist Alliance. In the end, the power to speak would still be in the hands of the allied countries. Just like in other worlds, in the X-Alliance and X-Alliance. Even if the rules stated that all countries were equal, regardless of size, the true power to speak would always be in the hands of one or two countries. In my mind, since I was destined to find allies, then the Shiloh Empire would probably be the most trustworthy ally apart from the Sluir Kingdom and the Donglan Principality. Yes, I didn't have much confidence in the human kingdoms in the Northlands. Species with short lifespans had short lifespans, and the rapid change in the throne was one of the reasons. But the worst part was that the human kingdoms themselves were fickle, and that some nobles and royalty had no bottom line. This time, I wasn't just representing East Mist. I was also representing Sluir, or perhaps I could even say the entire people of the Mist. The final goal of all these alliances was to reach an agreement with the Mega Empire Shiloh in all aspects. This would allow me to form a small alliance within the Mist Alliance that would have the right to speak. In that case, after I return, the entire Shiloh Empire will announce that Wumien's church is the national religion. Undead can worship a god, and even receive God's blessing? Will there really be an undead holy night in the future? That's so strange. Cough. I coughed lightly in displeasure. What's wrong with the holy night? Am I being shot while lying down? I'm sorry, Your Majesty. It's not that I have anything against you. Lionheart didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. He was the main negotiator for the Shiloh Empire on this matter. As for Omar, after playing for a while, he got bored and fell asleep on his own. He hugged his teddy bear and slept soundly. Omar has been having a lot of fun these past few days. By the way, Your Majesty, are you not intending to come back? If you retake the throne, Omar will probably listen to you obediently. I'm not interested. I'm a living person now. How can I rule the kingdom of the dead? Besides, with you guys around, there's no need for me to go through so much trouble. Yes, I'm a living person. Even if there's an epitaph and a monument, I'm still a living person. Then, let's move on to the next item. Regarding the disposal of the slaves, due to our special relationship, we were one big family, and the Shiloh Empire's unique political system, 100% dictatorship. As long as we came to an agreement, this matter was basically settled. The negotiations went so smoothly that it was as if we were having a casual conversation during a normal meal. However, even if we came to an agreement, it would still be quite troublesome to actually do it. For example, regarding the serious differences in the social system. Since we worshiped the God of law, then we had to at least make sure that the innocent were equal on the surface. Although I didn't add any intense words like everyone is equal or defeat the corrupt nobles in my teachings in order to prevent the nobles from ganging up on me the moment I was born, I didn't add any intense words like everyone is equal or defeat the corrupt nobles in my teachings. However, after Wumian's teachings spread out, since those who didn't commit crimes should have the same status and rights, then so-called slaves shouldn't even exist in such a society. Abolish slavery? That was only natural. However, the problem was that the current Shuo Empire's upper echelons were all high-level undead. The living were actually the main force of the slaves. Most high-level undead only treated the living as playthings and experimental materials. Abolishing slavery would mean a complete reversal of society's structure, liberating the lower echelons to the middle echelons. I had to be careful about this. The great majority of high-level undead weren't like my knight or the 4 heavenly kings before me. From a certain standpoint, the Holy Church's words were correct. Causing death and suffering for the living was a rare form of entertainment for the undead. It was the undead's nature to enjoy watching others suffer. And even the most ancient and undying high-level undead treated torturing the living and souls as an art. They enjoyed the pleasure of torturing their souls. Trying to change their views would be no different than killing them again. However, it was precisely because this was a purely authoritarian society that some things were easier to do. Then let's split them up. You all have time on your hands anyways, so take your time. Of course, if they still can't coexist in the end, let's have them become cannon fodder. With Omar around, I refuse to believe that they can overturn the heavens. With Omar's soul network, it would be impossible for any of his subordinates to resist his will. Back in the day, I had considered how difficult it would be to deal with even the undead lords, and that the new Shilua Empire would need to have complete centralization of power. In that case, my successor would need to be a perfect autocratic ruler. Omar, who had been created with such a goal, placed too much emphasis on his natural talents. But later, the situation and mindset changed, and I felt that that wasn't the most suitable path for me. Omar was even more likely to be a sensitive newborn who discovered that his father hated him, which was why he started a riot. The ironic part was that after all these changes, everything returned to the starting point. It was still this young ruler who ascended to the throne. In the end, I would still have to rely on his power to realize what I wanted. When I thought about this and looked at the big child who was drooling on the table, I felt that I should treat him slightly better in the future. Ah, father, why are you so thin and weak? Didn't you eat properly? Come, Omar, let's work out together. 1, 2, little apple. All right then, his sleep-talking caused me to retract my rare kindness. I really wanted to knock him awake with a brick. I had had enough of square dancing and divine music. There would be no end to this. I did my best to focus on the important matters at hand. Now then, the next problem is the issue of communication between the two countries. Besides, it wasn't just the difference in social systems that would easily cause problems. If we wanted to form a substantial alliance, our geographical situation wasn't ideal. Previously, we were too far away from each other, and it was inconvenient for us to communicate with each other. However, I already had a solution to this problem. How's the progress on the greedy wolves? Lionheart was quite excited when I mentioned the greedy wolves. After seeing that gigantic war beast that would mark the end of its era, he admired the person before him more and more. Unknowingly, Roland was also leading the way in this era. I just received news from my home country that with Mizar's technology and the abundant resources available in our country, the Greedy Wolves should be able to complete its main structure within 3 months if we successfully break through the technical difficulties. The outer shell and main weapons should be completed within 6 months, and it should be ready for its first flight within a year. Perhaps it was due to the influence of the great ocean battles back on Earth. But even though airships in this world were still mainly used to transport soldiers, I still favored airships. In my mind, a single airship wouldn't have much meaning. If I didn't create a sufficient number of functional airships to form an airship fleet, the true trump card of the Envy Borealis wouldn't be able to be used. The Big Dipper airship fleet was the future #1 airship fleet of Donglan and even the Mist Alliance. Its flagship was the Borealis, and its fleet consisted of 7 mega airships named after the 7 stars of the Big Dipper: Greedy Wolves, Mizar, Lutsuan, Wentsiu, Lianxiu, Wutsiu, and Destruction. Each of these airships had different functions and sizes. Greedy Wolves was the first airship to be built by the Shillua Empire. However, progress could only be described as barely smooth. In order to make it appear before the military parade, the second airship, the Mizar, was the first to be completed. Of course, the current Mizar was nothing more than a frighteningly empty shell. It would take at least half a year before all the equipment, personnel, weapons, and so on could be completed. Actually, this was already quite fast. War weapons weren't cabbages that could be easily created. Many countries would need half a century just to prepare a single elite knight squadron. What? The Borealis could be used as soon as it was built? The Allen Empire had once brought a quasi-mega battleship. After several generations of painstaking effort, the only thing left was that mega battleship. The weapons, equipment, personnel, command system, and hull modules were all ready-made. Not to mention, Envy's undead transformation had all increased the capabilities of the mega battleship, giving it life. By the time I received the airship, it was already more than 90% complete. All that was left was to add more people so that these newbies would become more and more familiar with the airship's commands. Yep, although this sounded quite awkward, the airship's understanding of its own physical body far surpassed that of any engineer. It would be strange if it wasn't fast. And now it was the second and third airship. Although we had the technology, it was still far from being ready. We could only keep moving forward as we explored. The first flight can be completed within a year? That's already faster than expected. Yep, then we'll start designing the Lutsuan and Wentsiu airships. I'll leave the Wutsiu and Lianjin airships to you. Let's leave the vanquishing army for now. The entire airship fleet should have combat strength within 3 years. Yep, as long as no major changes occur, this mission should be completed. Or rather, as long as there's no new war, it's possible to complete it earlier. Reinhardt considered the situation in the country and made a promise. In that case, the Mizar will temporarily travel between Definder and Shillua, while the Borealis will be used for inland transportation. It's fine to use an undead airship as a large merchant ship, but it'll probably be troublesome to use it to transport living people. How about we have the gnomes sell insurance for the passengers? We'll probably make a huge profit. Right, where's Dang? I'm going on a long trip, and I want to bring him along. You guys want to go as well? No, I'm with a human country. That place is very sensitive to the undead, and he seems to be the only one who can perfectly disguise himself as a living person. The former second Senator Feyman has returned. That's to be expected. If he joins the undead emperors of the undead plains, what better vanguard and guide would there be? If I were one of those undead emperors, I'd definitely send him out as cannon fodder. I mean, vanguard, to test the reactions of the various worlds. The first Senator Gricasio? It's only normal that there's no news of him. Gricasio's power level is unfathomable. Back in the day, I only cooperated with him. Don't look at how lazy he is. He actually has a fierce personality and think highly of himself. I don't believe that he'll obediently listen to any undead emperor's orders. The undead planes are becoming more and more active. That's to be expected, but be careful not to interact too much with them. Undead emperors aren't easy to deal with. Even you shouldn't directly face them. Many minor details were taken care of. By the time I left, it was almost midnight. What? That silver-haired female elf who was secretly inviting me to her upcoming concert. Today's weather was so nice. I didn't see or hear anything at all. I looked at the sky outside and stretched. If I went back at this time, I would probably have to listen to a certain person's endless complaints. Just as I was hesitating about whether or not I should find a place to cause a ruckus all night, or drag Adam out for a drink, a majestic figure blocked my way. Estrada? You were in big trouble. I wasn't surprised at all when Estrada started off with such a sentence. After all, he seemed to have greatly offended the Holy Church this time. I'm not here to fight. At the very least, I'm here to talk to you. But since Estrada made it clear from the very start that he was here to talk, I relaxed. At the very least, I closed the door to my frigid winter earth. The abnormal ice suddenly disappeared just as abruptly as it had appeared. The new pope was so angered by you that he fainted on the spot. He almost returned to the god of holy light's embrace. No need to waste your breath. You, Estrada, probably aren't that free. Since the path of holy light is unable to be saved, what do you intend to do? I hesitated as I looked at this man who suddenly aged several decades. His belief in a holy light was almost instinctive, and I wasn't sure why he had come here. In the end, I still nodded. Let me introduce you to a school. It's called Nanxiang. What? Relax. He doesn't teach digging. I don't even need an excavator to do that. I never expected that there would be a day when I would give this stubborn teacher a recommendation letter. You were prepared? You knew that I would come looking for you? Of course not. It's just that I don't want any holy knight to secretly come looking for me. So I wrote a few more letters. Right? Ivla is there as well. You can talk to her more. But it's best if you put on some makeup when you go in. If your pope hears about this and really dies, I'll be in big trouble. Right? Your Bishop Soros is too old. It's best not to tell him. I'll feel bad if something happens to him. What? He's already been stripped of his teaching position and has returned home to farm. It's really sad, pleasing to see. Chapter 258. Child, on the day you were born, the entire Dragon Valley reverberated with your name, blessed by the beast god, Beifeng Herald. My child, I proudly watched as you gradually grew up and became the messenger of love. Remember, our family has always ruled this country with justice and love. I also believe that you will carefully use your great power, the divine power that originates from true love. But true victory will never come from power. My child, there's a limit to a single person's power. What you need to do is to inspire your citizens' courage so that they will always stand by your side. I'm telling you all this because when my life ends, and you will be crowned king. Along with the dawn came a tall figure, followed by the background music and lines of the unscrupulous system that once again broke the limit of how low it could go. This was a man who had his own background music and lines. The sun was shining brightly behind him, and his crown-shaped horns dazzled my eyes. I've returned. System notification. As the reigning king of gentlemen, how could you allow yourself to be surpassed by a junior? Isn't it just a background music and lines? Come, from today onwards, Princess Peach's appearances will begin with a little swan ballet dance. From today onwards, I shall call you the man who carries ballet, shoes, and dancers with him everywhere he goes. That's enough. System, get the hell out here. I guarantee that I won't kill you with a single punch. If my system had a physical body, I definitely wouldn't have killed her with a single punch. How could killing her with a single punch be enough to vent my anger? She tricked me for so long that I would have to humiliate her for at least a month. Your Highness, I've returned. Can't you see that I'm talking to my system? Can't you have some face? I glared at him with dissatisfaction. Yep, got it. What's the matter? The simple and honest Draken's face was covered in dust. He looked like an old farmer who had just returned from planting trees in the desert. His face was filled with fatigue, and he seemed to be hesitating as he looked at me. Oh, right, where did you go? Why were you absent from work for so long? Forget it. I'm in a good mood today, so I won't pursue the matter. Seeing that my subordinates were working so hard as a good and forgiving superior, I naturally had to be considerate and offer my condolences. However, my casual question caused Beifeng's expression to change to one of unsure whether to laugh or cry. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. His vertical dragon eyes were wide open as he stared at me. Your Highness, didn't you want me to guard the Earth Elemental Plane and be the vanguard of the reclamation? You said that someone would pick me up in 3 days at the latest, but I've waited for so long and the advanced team you mentioned hasn't appeared yet. Don't tell me you've forgotten about me. All right then, this time, it was my turn to break out in a cold sweat. It seemed that I really did have such an arrangement in mind. Originally, I had intended to send an advance party to communicate with Beifeng and have Carol provide support. But after I had so many things to deal with and had such a happy birthday, I had forgotten about him. No, my memory had always been good. Or perhaps I should say that I had subconsciously ignored him. I didn't want him to come back during such a happy occasion and cause me trouble. No wonder when Jan reported to me yesterday, she said that the pressure at work was much less than expected, less than half of what it normally was. Everyone was even taking turns to rest. Could it be that this guy alone is capable of creating more than half of the chaos in the entire city? I have unintentionally done a good deed that is very gratifying to all. I thought about how the town security girls actually had the time to go shopping while they were taking turns to rest. The dark-skinned girls at the night market were no different from any other species. I suddenly felt that it wasn't such a bad thing to forget about him. Actually, Beifeng alone didn't have much power to create more than half of the chaos in the entire city. However, he was the vice leader of the Absolute Gentleman Alliance mercenary group. Since he was absent, along with the fact that the Biar brothers and Pierre had been dragged away to work on the Mizar, and all the higher-ups were forced to do hard labor, the Absolute Gentleman Alliance naturally didn't organize any activities. Not to mention, the Dark Elves now had many newbie town security subordinates, which was why the town security's overall strength was lacking. This allowed the town security to have the most relaxing holiday in their history. All right then, even if I recalled the reason for the morale, I should probably not say such things out loud. After all, I still felt rather guilty. Yep, thank you for your hard work. Due to some special reasons, we've temporarily placed our focus on preparing for the military parade and the arms trade. We've temporarily slowed down the construction of the Earth Elemental Planes base. You've worked hard and completed your mission well. I'll remember that. Now then, go back and have a good rest. Take a good bath and sleep. You should be tired by now. Tomorrow, when you've recovered, I'll come back to talk business with you. But the strange thing was that Beifeng didn't leave even after I said that. He actually had an excellent temper, and there wasn't any anger in his eyes. Instead, he looked at me with some embarrassment. HM, is there something else you need from me? Actually, some of my companions came back with me. They've decided to join our Gentleman Alliance. But it seems that in order to become a member of our mercenary group, according to the Mercenary Association's rules, they must first obtain citizenship. It seemed that there was indeed such a restriction on citizenship. But who was I? I was the ancestor of the leader of this country. Obtaining citizenship was a simple matter. I could simply inform Kelly and the others about it. It's a simple matter. Isn't it just citizenship? I'll just take them to the newly established Ministry of Civil Affairs later. I'll wait a moment. It's citizenship, not citizenship. Suddenly, I had an ominous premonition that something was wrong. That's great. You agree? The sly Beifeng caught onto my slip of the tongue and shouted loudly. Fourth bro, fifth bro, sixth bro, seventh bro, everyone come in. All right then. A sandstorm suddenly appeared outside the city gates, as if a huge army was passing by. However, when the guests in the sandstorm approached, they discovered that they were only a few huge fellows. The Desert Scorpion King? This was a gigantic scorpion that weighed more than 100 tons. Although it was only as tall as 3 people, its tremendous weight caused the ground to crack as it walked. As it slowly approached, the ground kept cracking and closing up. Fourth bro, be careful. Don't destroy the city gates. We can't afford to pay for it. This was a super magical beast from the Earth Elemental Plane. Even in the Earth Elemental Plane, it would be considered a powerful existence. How did Beifeng trick into coming here? 2 figures were sitting on the scorpion's back. The taller one was a high elf with tan skin. His eyes had a mystical, bewitching glow, and his skin was covered in crystals and rocks. A high-level sand dragon capable of transforming into a human form? Since the high elves were almost extinct in this generation, transforming into a high elf form was something only the immemorial dragons could do. Fifth bro, I've told you many times already. Before you can perfectly transform into a human form, put on a cloak. The rulers of this generation were humans. Naturally, the dragons would automatically choose to transform into humans. Only the ancient artifacts from the previous generation would maintain their eye-catching high elf form. After all, only the high elves would choose to transform into humans in ancient times. The other existence had long since put on a cloak. He was at least 3 to 4 meters tall, and his entire body was covered in rock dust. It was obvious that he was also a top-level existence in the Earth elemental plane. Your Highness, that's sixth bro. He's not very good with words. Suddenly, a large part of the ground swelled up. The ground trembled slightly, as if something was underground. Seventh bro isn't very good with words either. All right then, it would seem that there really were sandworms underground. Sandworms capable of leaving the Earth elemental plane, and they even had the ability to communicate. These definitely weren't ordinary sandworms. Were the Earth elemental planes, lords, traveling together? Beifeng, just what are you intending to do? How did they leave the Earth elemental plane? If this had been anywhere else, I would have been rather annoyed, but this was Wumian's divine domain to find her. Who would I be afraid of? Beifeng smiled. In my domain of true love, any type of life has the right to enjoy life. No matter if it's a normal creature or an elemental life form, it can live in a heavenly environment. Domain? That sounds like a soul world. No wonder. Wait a moment, could it be that you? No, that's impossible. Beifeng clasped his hands together and closed his eyes as he nodded slightly. His calm expression made him seem like an old monk who had seen through the vicissitudes of the mortal world. The sunlight shone on his tattered leather clothing, making it seem golden. He actually gave off a feeling of divinity, as if he had seen through life and death. Work can help people grow. After experiencing life-and-death battles, acting as a bystander, and tempering my will and physical body, acting as a bystander, I've finally taken a step forward. My soul world isn't powerful, but it can allow all intelligent life forms to survive. The kebab in my hand dropped to the ground. A legend who hadn't even been a year old had mysteriously entered saint rank just like that. Also, what did this ability that I'd never even heard of before mean? The legendary ability to bring your own harem to fight? This was obviously cheating, wasn't it? Are you the main character, or am I the main character? I almost died to reach gold rank, but you suddenly entered saint rank just by acting as a bystander. Instructor, there's something wrong with this plot. The difference in treatment is too obvious. This game isn't balanced at all. Could it be that this is the legendary story of torturing the main character? This won't do. You actually gave your cheat card to someone else. This way, the novel will fail. That's right, the Beifeng Herald in front of me was 100% saint rank. Only a powerful person at this level would have the authority to treat the Earth elemental lords as equals. Your Highness, the 7 of us brothers are loyal to each other and became sworn brothers. Now that our brothers are in trouble, of course I can't just watch them suffer. I've long heard that Your Highness is loyal and has friends all over the world, so I brought them to you on my own. With just a few words, the situation became quite clear. Our departure didn't mean that the Earth elemental plane had returned to peace. In fact, it was the opposite. Now that the Earth elemental lords who had suppressed the Earth elemental lords had passed away, the powerful Earth elemental lords and the ancient Earth elemental lords directly started a war. Now that the entire elemental plane was in a state of war, the Earth elemental lords who didn't want to fight for the throne were in a difficult position. They couldn't participate in the war, but they also had no choice but to participate. You say that you don't want to become an elemental god? Let's not even talk about whether or not this reason makes sense. How can you make us imagine that you won't come out to kill us while we're fighting to the death? All right then, this was an honest question. Even these Earth elemental lords who didn't want to participate in the war couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't attack if the victor's throne was right in front of them. Doubtlessly, the best way to deal with this situation was to stay away from the battlefield and leave the Earth elemental plane since they weren't interested in winning. However, it was obvious that the Earth elemental lords couldn't leave the Earth elemental plane as they pleased, unless they wanted to gradually weaken and die. And so, coincidentally, the Earth elemental lords discovered that the Beastmaster Hunter was actually capable of using his soul image to create a domain for all living beings to live in. After that, the plot developed quite simply. That's why the 7 of us have agreed to join Your Highness. Why me? Because you're the only one who won't be prejudiced against us. And more importantly, You personally defeated Omderokin. It'll be an honor to serve under you. As the favored children of chaos, elemental creatures followed the unquestionable law of the jungle. Perhaps they looked down on mortals with short lifespans, but elemental creatures that had grown from weak to strong would naturally have a stronger and more direct sense of respect for the strong. And in their minds, Roland, who had defeated Omderokin in a one-on-one duel, would doubtlessly be the best candidate to become the new elemental god if he was also an elemental creature. There wouldn't be anything shameful about seeking protection from such a strong individual. Upon hearing this, I came to a sudden realization. After thinking about it for a moment, I decided to agree to such a good thing that was delivered right to my doorstep. All right, I happen to be lacking manpower here, so I'll make the decision and directly agree. Bayphone, you've done well this time. I'll reward you later. Right, if you're talking about the 7 brothers, there should be 2 more, right? They didn't come? Haha, 7 brothers. Are they really not Calabash brothers? I'm sorry, you probably don't understand this joke, but it's quite fitting. Ha, Bayphone, you're the unbreakable 3rd brother. Upon hearing my initial agreement, Bayphone was delighted. Yep, although I don't know what Calabash brothers are, we 7 sworn brothers have our own nicknames. Since we're all at least saint rank, we've decided to collectively call ourselves the 7 Great Saints. Haha, 7 Great Saints? Haha. All right then. Ignoring my twisted expression from stifling my laughter, Bayphone excitedly shouted towards the outside of the city. Big sister, 2nd brother, His Highness Roland has agreed. He's here? All right then. The tall mountain in the distance suddenly moved. The arm in the clouds waved its hand, and it turned out that the mountain was actually an incredibly tall, towering giant. Good heavens, it really is the great saint who pacifies the heavens. It's inconvenient for 2nd brother to move around, so I left him outside. As for big sister, you've probably already met her. Greetings, His Highness Roland. I hope you haven't forgotten this old woman. I lowered my head to look. That raspy voice sounded rather familiar, as if I had heard it not long ago. But when I saw who it was, I sucked in a cold breath. The mother of 10,000 stones? The great stone sculptor Ainslow. Why are you here? Upon hearing this, the incredibly ugly elemental mother actually blushed and even secretly glanced at Bayphone. Then I understood. I understand now. Please don't tell me anything. Chapter 259. Perhaps even I didn't expect that some things would come so quickly. At the very least, I personally wasn't prepared for it. Arguing with the Holy Church. Fine, calling it backstabbing wasn't wrong either. Although I had offended the Holy Church, I had at least expressed my attitude and proved my ability. At the very least, Wumian's Church of Law has the ability to make the god of holy light temporarily tolerate them. They aren't pushovers that can be easily crushed. On the surface, all the major countries that worshipped the holy light expressed their condemnation of what happened that day. Yep, now everything that happened that day had an official name, the Shame of Soros. All right then, from this name alone, it could be seen that our pitiful Cardinal Roland had taken all the blame for this incident. But from a certain standpoint, he was destined to leave his name in the annals of history. Yep, he should thank me, Roland. It would seem that that performance was quite meaningful. At the very least, it helped Princess Peach become even more shameless. It would seem that you're not far from becoming undefeatable in terms of shamelessness. Shut up. This new dark history has already been sealed. I'll show whoever dares to mention it. Although all the major powers were condemning me for being disrespectful to the Holy Light, their military orders hadn't decreased at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. In private, all the secret envoys of the various emperors expressed their praise for me and promised to provide me with large amounts of resources. They also encouraged me and the Church of Law to continue attacking the Holy Church's reputation. Of course, there were no contracts or promises on paper. However, I knew that as long as Wumian's Church of Law was able to show hostility and threat towards the Holy Church, these verbal promises would be far more effective than a devil's contract. After all, any ruler would be truly dissatisfied with the Holy Church's reputation, which was even higher than that of a country's emperor. What made people even more dissatisfied was that they could only hide their dissatisfaction in their hearts. They didn't even know where to start venting. In fact, they had to do their best to show their faith and respect towards the holy light and divine job class members in order to receive various benefits and support from the local churches. When the Church of Holy Light became the most powerful religion in the world, and its believers occupied more than 80% of a country's population, the church's authority would be so powerful that it could even judge the king as a heretic. Meanwhile, the feudal lords under the unlucky king would happily kill off the heretic king and fight for the new throne. Before the large-scale religious reform that occurred after the Yonye calamity more than 100 years ago, no, the religious reform happened even earlier than that. Before the first religious reform that occurred more than 300 years ago, divine authority was far superior to royal authority. Back then, even a bishop dared to humiliate the emperor, and a cardinal could sue an entire country. In fact, even the princes and princesses of various countries were required to serve in the Holy Church's headquarters as hostages in order to express their devotion to the Holy Light. From a certain standpoint, even the incident with the Mist Kingdom was related to the Holy Light. If it wasn't for the fact that the various countries and the Holy Church had gone overboard, the subsequent developments wouldn't have led to the Yonye calamity. Naturally, the Holy Church wouldn't have gone through so many large-scale religious reforms. In fact, even the first religious reform 300 years ago was related to me. If I thought about it this way, it really was a terrible debt. Perhaps I was just born to be at odds with the Holy Church. Some things would be impossible to pick up again once they were missed. If the Holy Church wanted to regain its status from 300 years ago, even if the other true God churches agreed, the emperors of each country wouldn't agree. Perhaps the happiest ones right now were those devout believers with the word holy in their names. No wonder they were so anxious to send people to support the Holy Church. It was as if they were afraid that if they didn't support the Holy Church in time, the situation would worsen and Wumian's church would be slapped to death by the God of Holy Light. As for public support, as long as they weren't idiots, there was no way they would support the Holy Church on the surface. However, those weapons orders that would last us for 30 years, and there was even an inconceivable contract where the buyer would pay in full and the seller wouldn't limit the delivery time. As long as we were thick-skinned enough, we could extend the delivery time indefinitely. This was basically the same as giving money to the Holy Church. This is obviously an unreasonable treaty. Apart from the importance that the countries attach to our products, I'm afraid it's more of a kind of tacit support in the dark. We didn't get any benefits from the Holy Church, but we actually received support from the Holy Church's hidden enemies. I'm really speechless. The arms sales and military parade could both be considered a success. In a way, this also proved East Mist's power and the Mist Alliance's capital. Now that the dawn of a new generation had appeared, especially since the opportunity to revolutionize this new generation had already been proven to be real in battle, any wise ruler would definitely not miss out on such a great opportunity for a new technological revolution. This wasn't only an external temptation. After we proved our own abilities, several other countries in the Northlands contacted us in private, discussing the possibility of joining the Mist Alliance. However, I didn't change my mind. The first group of countries to join the Mist Alliance consisted of only 6 factions: the Donglan Principality, the Sloir Kingdom, the Shilua Empire, the Cheryl Autonomous Region, the Northlands Barbarian Alliance, and the Rhodes Kingdom. Only the Rhodes Kingdom joined the Rhodes Kingdom in order to avoid suspicion. Yep, the Rhodes Kingdom, which had originally been hesitant to join the Mist Alliance, unhesitatingly joined our side after the military parade that morning. No matter how large the Mist Alliance becomes in the future, the first group of countries to join the Mist Alliance will all become the core of the Mist Alliance. It might not be a good thing to casually expand right now. At this moment, in a large conference room, after Rhodes Kingdom's ambassador signed his name, the 6 new member countries of the Mist Alliance were finally confirmed. The Mist Alliance was thus born. To my surprise, I received a system notification. System notification. The Mist Alliance has been successfully established. The epic quest, Revival of the Mist, has been perfectly completed. The king of the Northlands shall be revived in a new form, calculating various rewards. Would you like to proceed with a settlement? This settlement will involve some future karma calculations. Please choose carefully. Didn't you complete this quest? Sacred Sword? Back then, in order to deal with Cavendish's sudden visit, my system had temporarily changed the system's completion status. It had originally been upgrade the Roland's Sacred Sword to God Equipment level, and clues to the God Equipment Crown of Thorns to obtain the God Equipment level Roland's Sacred Sword in advance. But while I had obtained the Sacred Sword, I hadn't received much of a reward. I hadn't even received any information about the Crown of Thorns. This quest is only calculating a portion of your achievements in advance. Now, I'm calculating the entire quest. System notification, it's rare for me to help you out, so why worry so much? If you don't ask your father to help, your younger brother will definitely beat you up. Would you like to calculate the settlement? Yes or yes? I couldn't help but laugh. Was there even a need to hesitate? Let's calculate the settlement. I still want to know where the Crown of Thorns is. It's in the hands of the current Emperor of Bardi. You even personally gave it to his ancestor. Chapter 260. Ding. Congratulations. You have successfully activated the epic quest, Revival of the Mist. Quest requirements. Resolve the danger of the Donglon Principality being annexed by other countries. Make the Arctic's Winter Wolf country return. In front of the true Winter Wolf King, Dasos is nothing. Quest rewards. The upgraded Roland's Sacred Sword and clues to the God Equipment Crown of Thorns. I know that you really want to find this God Equipment. Punishment for quest failure. You will become a sissy. I'm serious, very serious. If you can't even protect your country this time, you might as well become a sissy. Just like that ridiculous epic quest in the past, when I activated this quest, I already knew that this definitely wouldn't be a simple quest like the one mentioned in the quest notification. Resolve the danger of being annexed by other countries? Would it be enough to survive the Ottoman Empire's threat? Or would it be enough to reverse the situation where a weak country would be constantly bullied by others? Or would it be better to make Donglon into a superpower? In that case, it would naturally be impossible for Donglon to be annexed by other countries. Make the Arctic's Winter Wolf country return? If it was only the return of the Mist Kingdom, changing its name would be one thing. However, making Donglon independent would also be a perfect quest. Only if I could achieve the Mist Kingdom's former level would I truly accomplish my quest. Revival of the Mist? Yep, this was the most important quest notification. As long as the Mist Kingdom and the people of the Mist were revived, all problems would naturally be easily solved. That was how I understood it and how I did it. It had been more than a year since I returned to the surface. By now, the new Mist Alliance had been established, and military, political, religious, and other aspects had greatly improved. Perhaps the new Mist Alliance still wasn't mature, and Donglon still had a long way to go before it could reach the Mist Kingdom's level of domination over the Northlands. But at the very least, it was no longer a pushover that anyone could trample on. My system had imperceptibly helped me out yet again. If I had completed my calculations while I was in Antoon, the Mist Alliance project wouldn't have started yet, and the religious reforms and political reforms wouldn't have started yet. It was only natural that I wouldn't receive a high evaluation. At this time, all the foundations had been laid. All I needed to do was let it develop naturally, and the seeds I planted would reap the desired results. Without a doubt, this was the perfect time to complete my calculations. Actually, even if I wanted to interfere, there's not much I can do. I'll leave the results to time. Damn system, time to settle the score. After I gave my order, the entire world seemed to come to a standstill. Countless gray lines, horizontal and vertical, crossed the boundaries of space and intersected with each other. They intertwined and knotted with each other. The threads of fate connected countless people and objects. The order of space and time was rewritten, and the power of fate that could distort reality and the future was born. Next, countless karma threads trembled as if they were being plucked by countless invisible hands. These karma threads were pulled out from my body and weaved in midair before returning to my body. Time and space were meaningless in this still world. The flying shuttle and the threads seemed to have only lasted for an instant, but they had already connected countless objects and people. A new karma connection had been confirmed. Even the world stopped moving. I was unable to move. I could only watch as all of this happened. I knew that if it wasn't for the fact that I had recently come into contact with frigid winter's world creation, my consciousness would have been frozen the moment I gave the order. I wouldn't even have the right to witness this scene. Karma threads? The highest order concepts of time and space? That's the true effect of fate points? Just watching all of this happen caused chills to run down my back as I broke out into a cold sweat. This wasn't fear or astonishment. This was simply the instinctive humility of a mortal witnessing the Creator's power for the first time. I could sense that even though I had already touched the boundary, in some aspects, the difference between me and the Creator was like that between an ant and a dragon. There was no comparison at all. Don't I, who hasn't gone through creation, have the qualifications to understand these things? What exactly was the system? Why does it have the ability to control time and space and distort cause and effect? It was the first time I vaguely understood the operating principle of the system, but I didn't dare to think too deeply about it. Did you see that? This is our ability, so you have to respect us. TSK, TSK, TSK. In front of me, you're still too young. If you're willing to be our little brother, it's not impossible. As long as you maintained your Princess Peach appearance and looked at yourself in the mirror every day, I might be able to consider it. That's a good idea. Let's start with your favorite lace-made outfit tomorrow. Oh, high voice. Hee-oh, long voice. Hee-oh, high voice plus long voice. Hee-hee. All right, the little bit of respect that had just risen up vanished in the face of this shameless woman and the Queen's three-part laughter. Ah, dream on, dream on. Right after that, a notification popped up along with a mechanical notification sound. However, I didn't have the time to think too much about it. First quest objective: eliminate the danger of the Donglon Principality being annexed and subjugated. Calculating results. Originally, there were 5 countries that had ambitions to annex Donglon. In descending order of threat, they are the Sluweir Kingdom, the Surface Beastmen with the Blood Axe tribe as the core, the Tassel Kingdom of the Elves, the Casolan Kingdom, and the Ottoman Empire. Currently, none of the 5 factions have the ambition or power to annex or suppress Donglon. Quest completion is excellent. You are rewarded with several 100,000 fate points and 1 unyielding jade, an epic rank material. System notification: TSK, you actually managed to catch a dead rat by sheer luck. Alright then, this was yet another pitfall. The Ottoman Empire that everyone viewed as the #1 threat could only be ranked last. The greatest threat was actually the Sluweir Kingdom. However, it was easy to understand after thinking about it. In terms of motivation, the Sluweir Kingdom, which shared the same culture and race, would probably have the greatest motivation to invade Donglon. After all, any ruler with even the slightest bit of ambition would want to unify the people of the Mist and accomplish something that was destined to be recorded in history. It was likely that the Sluweir Kingdom had been waiting for Donglon to weaken even further, secretly waiting for the day when they would reap the fruits of their labor. Perhaps if the Ottoman Empire succeeded in suppressing Donglon, the first to retaliate or send troops would be the Sluweir Kingdom. Meanwhile, the Surface Beastmen and Tassel Empire had used their actions to show their ambition towards Donglon and even the entire Northlands. Both of them had sent troops. As for the Casolan Kingdom, fine then, the San Antonio Empire. It turned out that the San Antonio Empire didn't have any good intentions either. Or perhaps the San Antonio Empire's goal was the entire Northlands as well, and they had even planted a spy in Casolan. In comparison, the Ottoman Empire was naturally the least threatening of all. All the San Antonio Empire wanted was for Donglon to submit to them. Even if they had the conditions to annex Donglon, that would be something that would happen 100 years later. It was indeed understandable. Yep, the system was indeed the wisest. Nothing could be hidden from its eyes. The hell with being wise. The hell with being able to understand. Just how free are you? You actually pretended to be my psychological narration to praise yourself? Also, the system notification that said, "Who the hell is Desos?" was actually referring to a potential opponent that was far more troublesome than Desos? Can you be any scammer? Who could have possibly guessed such a notification with so many twists and turns? TSK. Are you unhappy that you didn't manage to scam me? Are you that unhappy that I didn't turn into a girl? Is there really a system like you who thinks about scamming the host every day? Just look at how other people's systems are like. Other families have dragons that learn martial arts at the age of 2, start a business at the age of 3, pick up girls at the age of 4, and become a government official at the age of 5. All right then, upgrading someone else's child to become someone else's dragon? Obviously, I was just making things up. However, I was so depressed that it was impossible for me to take revenge. At the very least, I would complain a little to vent my anger. But when I said this, I was actually sweating cold sweat. This system was far too sinister. If I thought that would be enough to deal with the Ottoman Empire, then I would probably end up with 0 points in my quest. No matter how I calculated it, I wouldn't be able to complete more than 20%. No, revenge is still possible. As long as you go to Gria's concerts every day, or enjoy the private lives of those gentlemen, such as Omar's gym, you can definitely take revenge. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'll listen to your suggestion to die together with you? No, if you seal your senses, I'll definitely be the one to die. Second quest objective: the rise of the ruler of the north, the Winter Wolf country. As descendants of the Mist, the Sluweir Kingdom, Donglan Principality, and Cheryl Autonomous Region have all become important components of the new Mist Alliance. The Winter Wolf country, which represents all of the people of the Mist, has been formed. You can begin calculating. All right then, I opened my mouth wide, but didn't say anything. Wasn't this just a game of words where I didn't use Donglan in the quest objective and instead used the Winter Mist Kingdom? From the very start, this quest included the descendants of the Mist like the Sluweir Kingdom. If I only focused on Donglan, the quest objective would at most have a 50% completion rate. No, a 1/3 completion rate at most. And the most sinister part was that my system had even planted a small nail like the Cheryl Autonomous Region. Half of these mixed bloods did indeed originate from the people of the Mist, so they counted as members of the people of the Mist as well. Obviously, it wouldn't be good to just ignore them. Just keep digging holes for yourself. Sooner or later, you'll have so many holes in your head that you can't fill them up. That'll be fun. All right then, I didn't know if my system felt my retort that transcended dimensions, but my system's icy voice already reached my ears. Analysis of the Mist Alliance completed. The Mist Alliance is currently composed of 6 core countries. Calculating and evaluating their possible future developments. Possible future factions to join the Mist Alliance are as follows, to be used as a strategic reference: Highland Beastmen. After the Underground Beastmen completely unify the Mist Alliance, as long as the Underground Beastmen are able to suppress the Highland Beastmen's infiltration of the Highland Beastmen, there's a 70% chance that this region will join the Mist Alliance as long as there's enough commerce and diplomacy and sufficient investment of resources. Estimated time to join the Mist Alliance is 20 years. Underground World Alliance. This faction's combined power has already surpassed the current Mist Alliance. Your decision to delay their entry into the Mist Alliance is correct. Not only that, this Underground World Alliance's internal structure is far too complex. At the very least, it will require a long period of reorganization and leadership. You can consider letting Sulphur Mountain City, Black Iron City, and other underground cities, which are on friendly terms with the surface, join the Mist Alliance first. Based on the current conditions, there's a 90% chance that this region will join the Mist Alliance. Estimated time to join the Mist Alliance is 50 years. It's recommended that you take further action to interfere with this. 3 Northern Elven Kingdoms. The Tassel Kingdom of the Elves no longer exists. The other 3 kingdoms are currently in chaos. They fear the humans' revenge, and they hate the Elven gods' lies and broken promises. Among the many choices, if you send Elven Queen Swanna as an envoy and take the initiative to extend a hand of friendship, you can also suppress the other kingdoms of the elves and the Elven gods' hostility towards you. It's possible that the 3 kingdoms will join the largest alliance in the Northlands, the Mist Alliance. System notification. They no longer have a self-sufficient environment to live in. Food, water, clothing, and so on are all dependent on the outside world. The Mist Alliance is the only path to life. So you understand, if you go too far, you'll be struck by lightning. With your shameless ways of doing things, there's an 80% chance that this region will join the Mist Alliance. Since the time to join the Mist Alliance is limited by artificial methods, that's your shameless way of doing things, it's impossible to calculate the estimated time to join the Mist Alliance. How should I comment on this? Normally, I'd say don't go too far or be too shameless. Was this the legendary Tsundra? United Northland's 7 kingdoms. The Sluir Kingdom, the Donlan Principality, and the Roland Kingdom are now part of the Mist Alliance. The Casolan Kingdom is a vassal of the San Antonio Empire. Before the San Antonio Empire collapses, there's less than a 10% chance that the Casolan Kingdom will join the Mist Alliance. The possibility of the Suya Kingdom and the Phoenix Nest Kingdom joining the Mist Alliance will be calculated based on the Mist Alliance's rate of growth, its geographical advantage in the Northlands, your favorable conditions, and many other factors. It's impossible to calculate. Calculating based on the Mist Alliance's current composition and calculating the future, harvesting fate points. In front of me, an unknown interface kept jumping. Religious monotheism, plus 12. New military technological reforms, plus 7. Such system notifications kept popping up, and the abnormal numbers kept accumulating. When these numbers finally stabilized, our final answer was revealed. Previously, my system had only calculated the future, which was the most likely future due to karma. But even with just the current Mist Alliance, it was no longer a small country that could be easily crushed by others. As the victories of numerous battles spread far and wide, the changes that occurred in this region were also revealed to the world. The current East Mist of the Northlands was now viewed by the world as a land of miracles, the birthplace of new technology, the land where the New Order true gods rose to power, and the land where new political systems and lifestyles were born. In this barren and cold land, religion, culture, politics, and technology began to fuse and interact with each other. Wumian's teachings allowed the people here to have the possibility of many different species living together. This unique racial structure and cultural atmosphere also gave the people here the opportunity to fuse and innovate new technologies. The creation and innovation of new technologies would ultimately result in military and political progress. When all these factors were mixed together and had a chain effect, nobody could predict what would happen in the end. However, what could be predicted was that Donlan had already attracted the attention of the entire world. Every day, countless visitors from other countries would come here to learn more about the Mist Alliance. This barren and cold land was destined to no longer be as lonely as it had been in the past. The most important thing was that Wumian's Holy Church's headquarters had already taken root here. The teachings of law had already begun to spread, gradually changing the habits and beliefs of the people here. The teachings of the Holy Light would receive the strongest challenge. Perhaps this would require a lot of time, but it would be enough to fundamentally change everything. I felt many emotions as I looked at the constantly rising numbers. Along the way, I had experienced countless hardships and misfortunes. Being scammed had become a daily occurrence, and I had also scammed others many times. It seemed that I had also scammed, swindled, and stolen quite a few times. No matter what, after experiencing so many twists and turns, I had already accomplished most of my strategic goals. Currently, the Holy Church's reputation had been successfully suppressed, and the law job classes had obtained the world's recognition. The spark of a new generation of technology was now in my hands. Most importantly, the Mist Kingdom had finally been revived. The people of the Mist, who were originally a mixed race with many different cultures, now had new family members and new cultures. We also had a home that we could fight for. I was no longer alone. Future Mist Alliance calculation. With Wumian's Holy Church as the national religion, the Mist Alliance has been established with many allied countries. The Mist Alliance has the potential to become a mega empire. All parts of the Northern Winterwolf quest have been completed. Quest evaluation is perfect. Reward: several 100,000 fate points. Mystical item Winterwolf emblem. Semi-god equipment. Consumable Bloodthirsty Covenant. Although the completion was quite a scam, seeing the system notifications that flooded my screen meant that all my hard work had paid off. All my hard work hadn't been in vain, which made me feel happy from the bottom of my heart. Finally, we have a home. So much hard work, but this was more than enough. Chapter 261. Silver Team, report your numbers. A new team of travelers was currently assembling. This was the final roll call, as well as the final preparations before departing. The first knight is in position. The first member was a gray elf knight of law. However, he didn't wear any heavy and sturdy metal armor. Instead, the armor made from the skin of a top-tier dragon was even more valuable, especially since it was a gift from a semi-god level 9-headed dragon. It was a rare item that couldn't be bought on the market. Light and thin leather armor was the best match for an elf warrior. It allowed the elf warrior's natural agility and dodging ability to be unrestricted. However, in terms of slashing and piercing defense, it was even better than the hardest adamant armor. Its outstanding magic resistance was even better than mithril, which was known as the king of magic metals. If it wasn't for the fact that this material was so difficult to obtain, I would have given it to all the elite warriors, but leader, can you wipe off the black dust? Such a good piece of equipment, but it looks like a second-hand item that costs 15 silver coins each. It took me so much effort to steal it from Momo. Yes, the gray elf in front of me wasn't the shameless Momo. For the sake of my chastity, cough cough, for the sake of my dignity as the leader, I ignored the rabid dog who strongly requested to travel with me. I also ignored the pleas of, Momo has only worn it for a few days, don't steal Momo's treasure. Ah, smelly Sister Yawn, don't wear it. Your thick thighs and fat chest will ruin her. And chose Captain Yawn, who had just completed the moonlight ritual. Besides, this wasn't entirely my personal opinion. As a fellow Law Knight, not only was Yawn at the peak of gold more reliable in terms of combat power, that Dragon Slayer greatsword that she could use as she pleased was a myth-ranked weapon. Actually, it was a top-tier weapon that could face off against legend-ranked weapons. Coupled with her dragon skin armor and natural magic resistance skin, she could fight, tank, and deal damage, but she couldn't run fast. Her head had been fooled by the holy light, and she was honest. She was a perfect cannon fodder that could be thrown to the back when necessary. Cough, I'm in a meat shield. Since everyone trusts me, and the two princes have entrusted me with the heavy responsibility of managing the city, as the leader of the town security night squad, how can I be restricted by sunlight? Most importantly, forget about being the leader. How can I be worse than Momo? I also want to accept the moonlight ritual and become a gray elf who doesn't fear sunlight. Yawn, who gritted her teeth and accepted the moonlight ritual, was one of the newest gray elf representatives among the town security night. Fortunately, after Rose was no longer around, the risk and pain of the moonlight ritual was greatly reduced. After this news spread, many ordinary dark elves also accepted the moonlight ritual for the convenience of living on the surface. It seems that the moonlight goddess has a good temper. She doesn't even take it to heart that so many false believers have suddenly appeared. It seemed like this ritual consumed a lot of divine power. Was she planning to seize the priesthood of redemption? Isn't this a declaration of war against the god of Holy Light's follower gods? After Yawn became a gray elf, Yawn became a gray elf. Momo's original greatest advantage was gone. Yep, I definitely didn't choose Yawn because Momo was too difficult to deal with. As for the effect of taking away the leader of the town security night squad, today's weather is really good. Number 2, Cohen, Knight, Magic Warrior. I glared at him, and this pitiful acolyte immediately changed his tone of voice. Perhaps he still seemed like a punching bag in front of us, but this young knight was actually already one of the most popular major figures in Definder. His seemingly God-given magical talent allowed him to stand out. As my knight retainer and the great engineer Tim Ladd's best friend, this young knight, who had been born in a farmer's family, had already become one of the higher-ups in this city. His simple friendliness had won the trust and friendship of others. The only thing that most people didn't understand was that even though he had mysteriously entered the silver rank as a mage, he still persisted in cultivating as a knight and always emphasized his status as a knight retainer. But if he mentioned one thing, everyone could understand. Oh, he's His Highness Roland's disciple. No wonder. What nonsense! Are there no normal people by my side? When I heard this, I was furious and immediately retorted. However, my retorts became softer and softer as I did my best to recall all the names in my mind. Adam, Amelia, Renee, Galena, and so on came to mind. Not a single one of them could be considered normal, which really made me lose my confidence. It's not my fault. It's all because of that title of the King of Gentlemen. I think that this is simply a case of birds of a feather flocking together. Before you had this title, how many normal people did you meet? I really didn't know how to respond to such a direct retort. Cohen and Jan were among the few that were relatively normal. Although the dark elf who yearned for the light and the magical genius who wanted to become a knight were slightly strange, but at the very least, most of them were normal. At this point, everyone probably knew my criteria for choosing my companions. That's right, normal people. I'd had enough of the gentleman and Chinibu. This time, I was going to do my best to choose normal people to travel with me and even out the sorrowful atmosphere of this team. If you want to lower your sorrowful atmosphere, kick yourself out. That's more practical than anything else. Shut up. Do you believe that I won't help you level up to become the god of gentlemen and increase your ability to attract gentlemen by 10 times? Cough, cough. Today's weather is really nice. Let's get back to the main topic. With Heloise's guidance, Cohen's magic cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. His research on the 4 elemental swordcasters was already unique, and he created many unique sword seals and magical sword techniques. It could be said that his student had surpassed his teacher. Even though he was still a silver rank rookie, he was able to use magical sword techniques that were above gold rank. As for his melee sword techniques and combat techniques, through the meticulous teaching of several sword saint level experts, he had probably evolved from being chased by a skeleton soldier until he's half dead to being chased by a skeleton soldier until he's half dead. All right then, there was still some improvement. However, since a skeleton soldier was usually the same as a farmer, actually, the improvement was basically negligible. Bastard, I've never seen such an idiotic swordsman like you. With so many sword saints, even a gnome would have evolved into a gnome swordsman, yet you can't even remember how to hold your sword. As expected of Roland's disciple, you clearly don't want to take the easy way out. You're only looking for a hard wall to crash into. All right then, aside from that last sentence, Adam's anger was quite reasonable. However, I could understand little Cohen's pursuit. After all, back in the day, I was also able to understand swordsmanship with a single glance, but when I read magic books, I would feel drowsy. Yet, I still wasn't satisfied with becoming a melee fighter. Back then, I wasn't willing to become a melee fighter mainly because I felt that melee fighters were cannon fodder. Mages were cool and powerful. However, Cohen insisted on becoming a knight. It was probably because of the honor and protection that the path of a knight represented. Although it was understandable, the golden period of growth for ordinary humans was only in these few years. Cohen's talent was so outstanding that it would be a pity to waste it. This time, you should have the opportunity to fight in actual combat. Practice more. If you still can't do it, then obediently become a mage. Since we're going to the mage country, I can give you a letter of recommendation from the Cloud Tower so that you can start your training. Looking at Cohen's bitter face, I felt as though I was looking at my past self. I stroked the young man's hair and flicked his head to show encouragement. Then, I turned my attention to the next member, a member that I couldn't reject, who had taken the initiative to join. Then, I'll be number 3. As for the job, Dragon Queen? All right, I'll be a ranger. My swordsmanship is quite good, right? A beautiful, black-haired woman was wearing an exquisite silver chainmail and carrying a thin mithril sword that was more decorative than practical. She happened to be on the way to ask for Molly's help, so she decided to travel with me. As for her own dragon city, the weather today is really good. Yep, although there were dark clouds, thunderstorms, and hail, the weather was still quite good. It seemed that the dragons were quite knowledgeable about the weather. Their opinion was exactly the same as mine. You haven't been the Dragon Queen for long. Aren't you afraid that your subordinates will rebel after you leave? Our voices are the loudest in the underground. Who will they rebel to? Aren't they afraid that we will take revenge on them? Besides, as long as they are capable, and courageous, rebellion isn't a big deal. Being the Dragon Queen is boring to death. Every day, you can't do this or that, and you have to stay in Dragon City. It's even worse than being in Sulphur Mountain City back then. It's basically a prison. Whoever wants to be the Dragon Queen can do it. Now that I'm out, I want to drink and play to my heart's content. Should I say that as expected of Little Red? This identity of the Dragon Empress, which Molly viewed as her lifeblood, was nothing more than a shackle to trap her. Now that she was using this opportunity to slip out, Dragon City would probably be in complete chaos. However, it was a good thing that she came. After all, an adventure was one thing, but it was also necessary to bring along a trump card that could turn the tables at a crucial moment. Originally, I intended to have Adam or Marguerite follow me, but those two fellows seemed to know that I was doing hard labor. Just as I was preparing to set out, they quietly disappeared. It's fine if they don't come. I don't want to see flash bombs all day. Number 4. Who's number 4? Sigh. Your Highness, why are you sighing all of a sudden? Did I do something impolite? The person who was pretending to be calm and surprised was the legendary drool Eaglestorm. I had no choice but to bring him along. After all, it would be fine even if an adventuring team didn't have a mage or warrior. But without a healer, that would be basically suicidal. After all, nobody could guarantee that they wouldn't be injured, poisoned, cursed, or ambushed. But due to our relationship with the Holy Church, it would be quite difficult to find a trustworthy high-level Holy Light priest. Although the job classes of the Church of Law were generally good at fighting, they indeed didn't have much healing abilities. The town security knights' Holy Light job classes were all dark elves, so it wouldn't be convenient for them to come along. In the end, I could only helplessly choose my backup option, the representative of all trades, the drool who could fight, resist, heal, and cast spells, but was all half-baked. Number 5, Kolos. Your Highness, I'll do my best. Kolos, the judge and drool of the storm, also came along. Wasn't there a saying that a drool, a holy knight, and a shaman could only be considered half a priest? Since Eaglestorm was obviously unreliable by himself, I might as well bring a few more. Yeah, since drool can only be considered half a priest, I brought 2. They're both legend rank, although one of them is a transformation specialist, while the other is a storm specialist. They should still work together. I think so, but when I glanced at the books in Kolo's hands, Beginner's First Aid, How to Put on Bandages in 3 Minutes, Herbology Handbook that even a monkey can learn, and the various healing spells, all at the beginner level, attached to Eaglestorm's belt, the corners of my eyes twitched. It would seem that I had thought too highly of myself. There's no way. I'll just do it myself. Yep, there's also a Holy Knight who's a melee specialist, and that'll make 3. That's at least equivalent to 1. 5 priests. A dragon descendant ranger whose level was unimaginably high. A genius magical swordsman whose combat power was almost at the gold rank, and a law knight who had racial talents and equipment that could slay legend rank warriors. What a reliable vanguard. But it seemed that when it came to the rear guard, they suddenly became unreliable. Meanwhile, Jan and Cohen nervously glanced at these beautiful legend rank healers. They didn't even think to comment that half-priest is probably referring to Drool, who's a life force specialist. Instead, they unhesitatingly swore that they absolutely wouldn't get injured. As for Little Red, she yawned and began to doze off. Ordinary human healers wouldn't be of much help to her to begin with. A bishop of the Holy Light priest's healing abilities would be exhausted to death. It would be better for her to just sleep in and recover naturally. Me. I'm a saint rank hunter. I'm number 6, right? Yep, what an auspicious number. That's wonderful. Beifong didn't care that I was doing my best to ignore him. He was still trying his best to make his presence known. If I had any other choice, I definitely wouldn't have chosen him. But the problem was that for adventuring teams, a veteran hunter's abilities were far too useful. They could scout the way out in the wild, track enemies, predict danger, and detect traps. With a veteran hunter in the team, we could travel and rest in peace in the wild. This was more practical than anything else. Meanwhile, our ranger was a non-technical idiot, a certain dragon. In such a situation, it was a must-have, especially since a beast tamer's ability to summon beasts would be of great help to my goal. Don't cause trouble for me. Don't spread your ridiculous teachings about true love and mental corruption. Don't do those disgusting things in front of me. Bayphone kept nodding, but I gave up halfway through his sentence. No matter how nice his current promises were, he would probably instantly forget about them if he really met true love. Number 7. I'll be myself. Yep, I'm a holy knight. Ice and snow archmage. I proudly touched the long hem of my snow-white archmage robe and proudly showed off to everyone. Did you think it was easy for me? After being a cannon fodder for so many years, I finally managed to become a rearguard. It really wasn't easy. I've been a holy knight for so many years. I can finally change my identity. From today onwards, please call me Archmage Rodri Evenster. What's written on my fake identity? Forget it. The name is too long and hard to remember. I'll just call you Rolo. I lightly twirled my staff and assumed the posture of a weak mage walking forward with a staff. However, I accidentally knocked my staff onto the ground, shattering a large chunk of the ground and sending rubble flying everywhere. It seems that using adamantine as a staff wasn't a good idea, but I feel like it'll be fun to hit people. Yep, when those muscle-bound fools get close to me, I'll hit them with my staff. Just thinking about it makes me feel good. Should I start with a mage whose name I can't even remember? With that level of intelligence, I'd rather be a warrior. Or should I start with a staff that even ogres can't lift? Are you intending to use a staff to kill the warriors in front of you? Or should I start with the name of my retort team? Did a physical education teacher teach you language skills? It turned out that the silly cat's retort was becoming more and more professional. It seemed that it was because she had many opportunities to practice. You're already retort. Also, what's wrong with the name Silver Coin Team? Full name, Silver Coin and Handsome Guy's Magical Adventure Team. Isn't that a nice name? I won't mention the name Golden Beauty Adventure Team back in the day. You're the team leader, after all. You said that the more tacky a team's name is, the easier it'll be for people to remember. Aren't adventurers supposed to pursue romance and wealth? This name is quite moving. There were quite a few females in our team, and we were quite happy to be praised as beautiful. Back then, we didn't have much experience, so we were easily fooled by you. But do you know the expressions of our opponents when we signed up? They laughed so hard that they even dropped their weapons. That was the greatest shame of their lives. Even Little Red was complaining. It seemed that she had accumulated quite a bit of resentment over the years. Later on, apart from you, nobody in our team would use our real name to refer to our adventuring team. The end result was that our personal reputation was far greater than our adventuring team's. Not long ago, there was an idiot who asked for the name of our adventuring team from back then, wanting to investigate our adventuring history. I slapped that idiot away, and everyone thought that I had a bad temper. The true reason was because of your ridiculous name. Do you think you can tell them this name? I still have some face left. Little Red kept complaining, but the silly cat kept laughing as she listened. She was still doing her best to add insult to injury. But now, you split the Golden Beauty into Golden Beauty, and then Golden Beauty became Silver Beauty, and Beauty became Handsome Guy? Isn't this amazing naming ability something out of this world? I fell silent, but the silly cat was still foolishly making a ruckus in front of me. Handsome Guy team? You're the best at coming up with this. Do you want to be called Captain Handsome? TSK, TSK, TSK. Princess Peach seems to be giving you quite a bit of pressure. Do you really want to be called Handsome Guy that much? I was so angry that my veins were bulging. I gritted my teeth and gave the order, using my magical pet contract to lock onto the silly cat. I finally know what our team is missing. It seems that we're missing a cannon fodder thief who specializes in setting traps and removing them. Yep, it's still the work hats who are the best thieves. Number 8 Heloise, come Captain, I've prepared a thief outfit for you. You should wear it. Wait a moment. You said cannon fodder, right? Also, what's this? A cat and a cat tail? Just where are these? There's even a pink female leather armor. Ah, you pervert. Why are you carrying these on you? These are leftovers from the last time we went to the Beastman tribe to investigate. Heloise, don't even think about changing the topic, and don't even think about running away. Obediently wear them. Did you use them before? You pervert. Don't even think about it. Chapter 262. I loudly pointed at the little woman who was currently sobbing in the Andy's arms. The other villagers in the room all had expressions of shock and disbelief. In their minds, this young couple had just gotten married not too long ago, and they were always so attached to each other that their relationship couldn't be any better. The one who was the most heartbroken about Jack's sudden death was Rose. She had already fainted from crying several times. How could she possibly have done it? The evidence is the cause of Jack's death. The knife wound on his neck wasn't a true fatal wound, and the bruised handprint on his neck wasn't either. His ashen complexion was the key. He was poisoned to death. The handprint on his neck was only an act of him wanting to breathe in his desperation. The open door and the missing necklace were only fakes to disguise himself as a bandit. Evidence? The evidence is this half-filled bottle of poison that we found in your backyard. Rose, do you dare to show me your cutlery? There must still be some poison left on it. Don't tell me that all the dishes are broken. It was obvious that my reasoning wasn't very logical. However, Rose wasn't a rich girl who had received an elite education. She was just a village girl who had never seen the world before. When I suddenly shouted at her and waved the medicine bottle in front of her, she immediately panicked and let the cat out of the bag. I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to scare him. Who told him to use my dowry to gamble? Our family can't even afford to eat anymore. Wah, who knew that rat poison would actually kill him? All right then. The cause of pitiful Mr. Jack's death was also discovered. It was actually rat poison that was necessary for murder. Even if he lost all of my dowry, he actually cheated on me with Carl from the jewelry store next door. Jack actually cheated on me with Carl for 3 years, and he only married me to cover it up. That's why I made it, so that he would never be able to see him again. All right then. Carl seemed to be a male's name. It would seem that Jack's tastes were rather unique. However, I looked at Rose, who was crying and laughing at the same time. She was so angry that she was gritting her teeth and laughing at the end. Her smile was obviously hysterical. While I sighed at how much information I had just received, I also had other thoughts. It seems that for Comrade Jack, the same sex is true love, and heterosexuality is just instinct. How can people of different genders fall in love? See, he just died after less than 3 months of heterosexuality. But for us, who were just outsiders, this was enough. The rest would be left to the locals to solve. Still, I was quite proud of the fact that we were able to complete the task of finding the murderer so quickly, solving the case miraculously in 2 hours. From today onwards, please call me Detective Rollo. Who doesn't know that this woman is the murderer? You're the only one wasting time looking for evidence. You're having so much fun. On the other side of the wooden table, the smaller feline thief was fiddling with the cat ears on her head with a displeased look on her face. Her yellowish-brown cat tail was also drooping weakly. It seemed that the new feline thief, Heloise, was still very unhappy with her new identity and equipment. Nonsense. I've watched more than 300 episodes of Detective Conan and Kendaichi's methods. I know at least 2,000 ways to kill people and their motives. That's not something you guys can easily see through. The wisdom of mortals. You seem to have forgotten that I was the one who taught you undead magic. The dead man's resentment is all wrapped around that woman. Even if you don't use a soul-summoning spell, his remnant soul is constantly screaming in the room. It's obvious. Remember to perform an exorcism ritual later. Otherwise, a resentful spirit might appear. You could do this? I was so astonished that I opened my mouth wide. I had forgotten about this trick. It seemed that being a detective in the magical world wasn't easy at all. Undead mages would definitely be able to solve murder cases if they worked as police. They were truly fierce at stealing jobs. However, The others continued to attack my confidence as a famous detective. There's still the smell of poison on the dead man's lips. There's also the smell of poison on that woman's hands. The smell is quite fresh. It should have been done about 2 hours ago. The great drool had a bitter smile on his face as he rubbed his nose. However, I could see the pride hidden under his seemingly calm expression. As a drool who specialized in transformations, the strength of a bear, the speed of a leopard, and the nose of a dog were all child's play in front of him. He was playing with the strength of a semi-dragon, the speed of a griffin, and the sense of smell of a shadow wolf. He would be able to detect poison of this level with just a simple sniff. And when I looked at the eager Kolos, I didn't say anything else and immediately turned around. How could I not know? As a judge who specialized in judgment, as well as a high-level priest of the god of law, sinners would have nowhere to hide in front of her. She probably wouldn't even need to use any divine arts like lie detection. A simple judgment spell would be enough to solve all problems. Your Highness, Little Feather told me that she saw the entire process of that woman poisoning the dead man. Beifeng and his wives strongly condemn such a vile act. If it wasn't for the fact that Little Feather was a sparrow, even a sparrow could have a harem. Beifeng's simple and honest smile was quite deceptive. But as far as I was concerned, Jan and Cohen were probably the only ones in my team who didn't know what was going on. After all, they were cannon fodder with useless intelligence. I mean melee job classes. Do you think that lies will be effective in front of a true dragon? Little Red casually added insult to injury. Your Highness, our daily training includes simple criminal investigation like this. We Dark Elves also have a certain amount of research on poisons. It was quite clear from the moment we saw the corpse. Jan, who was always honest, seemed to be in a difficult position when she saw how depressed I was. However, she wouldn't lie to me. My youngest disciple Cohen didn't say anything. Instead, he kept nodding in agreement with my inference. But as a poor farmer's child, as well as a strange knight whose intelligence was more than twice his strength, he noticed the half-empty bottle of pesticide the moment he entered the room and noticed all the clues. Still, I had to give face to my master. As for me, this lame, fake expression of amazement and excessive nodding of approval was the best way to add insult to injury. It made me feel even more ashamed. Magic and whatnot are so annoying. It's the unorthodox path to directly flip to the end of a detective novel to find out the true culprit. Famous detectives never need any magic. All we need is sharp observation skills and imagination. Can't you just use the evidence and clues to make logical deductions and slowly force the culprit into a corner? Everyone had astonished expressions of, don't we already have magic and divine arts? Why we need to go through so much trouble? This made me feel even more embarrassed. It turned out that my reasoning from the very beginning had been unnecessary. And so, my urge to cry transformed into action. I hate this unscientific world the most. How are famous detectives supposed to survive like this? You unorthodox path, people who only read guides when playing detective games. The mayor of Buga Town, Old Bob, finally relaxed as he watched the villagers take Roth away. But no matter how chaotic the situation was, Buga Town's rarely seen murder case had been solved, which was truly worthy of celebration. As for the mage team leader who was currently drawing circles in the corner, cough, mages were a rather special job class. This was probably some sort of special celebration ceremony, so Bob wisely pretended not to see anything. Goose rice tofu. I came from the Great Tang of the Midlands to the Western Paradise to pray to Buddha. These are my 3 disciples and my mount. The one with the dragon head is a black dragon horse. He just learned how to walk on his own, so he doesn't allow anyone to ride him during his rebellious phase. The dark-skinned elf is my 3rd disciple, Monk Sand. The one with the aquiline nose is a muscular man, and he's Zhu Wuning, who can transform into a pig. My 1st disciple, Heloise, can you transform into a monkey? Damn it, you actually bit me. From a moment Roth introduced himself, the old village head felt that this venerable mage seemed to have been hit in the head by a meteor. Roth's imagination was especially wild. Roth didn't understand what Roth was saying at all, and it seemed like he didn't even hear what Roth said at all. but it seemed that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. The rumor that the crazier a mage was, the more powerful they would be was actually true. Roth had just hired Roth not too long ago, and the case had already been solved in less than 2 hours. It was already quite strange for a murder case to occur in a town that had always been peaceful. Roth also felt a lot of pressure and stares when he hired new adventurers to investigate the murder case, especially since the members of this adventuring team were all very strange. There were beastmen, half-dragons, elves, drool, and even humans. They were all very strange and unreliable. But now, the facts proved that he had made the right choice. Both the witness and the evidence were present, and the criminal had honestly confessed. Naturally, this was an ironclad case that could be explained to the villagers. Roth was quite pleased with his own judgment, and couldn't help but thank the adventuring team members. By the time Roland recovered from his depression, the 15 silver coins he earned from solving this case had already been used to pay for today's sumptuous dinner and 2 weeks' worth of hotel fees. Although it still wasn't much, this was already the largest amount of money he had earned in the past month. Unlike epics and legends, real adventuring teams were like this. This was especially true for ordinary adventurers in the relatively peaceful Central Plains. They would spend most of their time running errands like helping Charlie's family find a dog or helping young Ridley deliver a love letter. Rather than calling them adventurers, it would be more accurate to say that they were a group of hired temporary workers. Some people became adventurers in order to have an exciting life as an adventurer. However, it was actually quite rare for a Dragon Slayer quest to slay demons, and it also had a high requirement on strength. Top-level adventuring teams that had the ability to complete such a quest would have to consider whether it would be worthwhile to invest and obtain such a high-difficulty Dragon Slayer quest. For the Legraz Kingdom, which had been peaceful for so many years, even a group of goblins appearing on its borders would be a major threat. Even the Royal Knight Squadron would fight to farm some honor and military achievements. So the adventurers in the Legraz Kingdom were even more unsightly. Any mercenary or adventurer with even the slightest bit of ambition would consider going to another country to make a living. Of course, if the adventurers and mercenaries were in an area where the flames of war never stopped, the adventurers and mercenaries there were even stronger than the military. Adventurers would grow by fighting against monsters every day, and some would even dare to accept combat quests. There were even quite a few mercenary kings who became true kings. Just relying on commission would obviously be insufficient. Most of the adventurers' income still depended on the spoils of war from quests. There were quite a few adventurers who would steal from their enemies and eat their employers. That was why adventurers and mercenaries didn't have a good reputation. This was especially true for new adventuring teams that didn't have a good reputation. That was why most adventuring teams would try to accumulate their own reputation and reputation. Even slightly higher level quests would have requirements on the adventuring team's level and reputation. Not just anyone would be able to accept such quests. Old Bob had chosen the Silver Coin adventuring team, which had no reputation at all, because this type of murder case between farmers was destined to have very little profit. The small town would also be able to offer pitifully little commission. Large mercenary groups and veteran adventurers wouldn't even be interested in such a thing, which is why he had this group of youngsters try it out. He never expected that the case would be solved so quickly, which was quite a pleasant surprise. As for me, choosing this small border town near the Bardi Empire was the result of careful consideration. This town was surrounded by mountains, and the Eloin mountain range stretched for several thousand kilometers. Every week, there would be mountain dwellers coming out of the mountains to explore the world. Becoming an adventurer who could earn a living just by working hard was obviously a good job. That was why it was relatively easy to verify adventurers' identities here. It was impossible for the government officials to enter the mountains to verify their identities. It was also quite common for adventurers to form teams from the same hometown. However, there weren't many adventurers who would choose to stay in a peaceful town where there wasn't much profit to be made. As for the Silver Coin adventuring team, a large number of new people meant that it would be easy to create fake identities. The small number of permanent residents meant that the management wouldn't be strict, but it would save a lot of trouble. The Silver Coin adventuring team could stay in this small town for a while and learn to imitate the locals' accent. This would also make it easier for them to do business in the nearby countries. As for me, that myth-rank quest would only be activated in the Mage Country's Cloud Tower. It was obvious that it was an important quest. However, I didn't intend to go there directly. I wouldn't feel at ease if I didn't go to the Bardi Empire to take a look at the legendary dimensional door to the undead plains. In order to make a more accurate judgment, I would need to sneak in and take a look for myself. Originally, I had intended to sneak into the Bardi Empire directly. However, the Bardi Empire's strict management system for adventurers and mage registration would obviously be quite troublesome. It would be quite troublesome if the undead emperors and the Bardi Empire's officials surrounded and attacked me. That was why I chose to take a roundabout route to save the Bardi Empire. The Ligraz kingdom wasn't a particularly powerful kingdom. However, due to the royal families of the two kingdoms being related, the Ligraz kingdom had a good relationship with the neighboring Bardi Empire. The citizens of the two kingdoms often interacted with each other. Although this small town wasn't exactly prosperous, it wasn't far from the main road leading to the Bardi Empire. The government's tolls and hotels were far too expensive. Many veteran merchants would rest in small shops or residences far away in order to get bargain. My plan was quite simple. Since there were merchants here, there would naturally be plenty of opportunities to recruit guards. I would wait until I met a wealthy merchant from the Bardi Empire who had a strong enough status, find a suitable opportunity, and show off my power to sneak in. The stronger the dimensional door, the larger it would be. The moment it was activated, the more obvious the elemental fluctuations would be. It would be impossible to hide it. Perhaps I would be able to accomplish my goal of scouting by simply following the merchant. But waiting is so boring. I've already made my neighbor, Catherine, look for a kitten 6 times. How about I make a cat meat hot pot, or send Heloise over to appease this silly naughty child who feeds her cat bones and lollipops every day? Since the situation in the Northlands was progressing well, and I wasn't in a rush for time, I enjoyed my time here as if I were on vacation. Of course, since this adventuring group consisted of far too many different species, it was far more wasteful to spend money than to earn money. In the end, the villagers viewed my adventuring group as a second-rate mage from a wealthy family who had bodyguards, the muscular Eaglestorm, concubines, the elves, and pets. A certain cat girl was still tearing at them. This was completely understandable. Several weeks had already passed. Little Red had finished off the last of the town's alcohol supply, and all the quests that had been posted in the town had been completed over and over again. However, I still hadn't met any suitable opportunities or merchants. However, the other person I had promised to meet with came looking for me. Lilith, why are you here so quickly, Amelia? Chapter 263. Lilith Milan, formerly known as Fina Milan, was a high-level Blood Tribe member. She was the main character of the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. Due to her past, she lacked trust and a sense of security towards men, which was why her sexual orientation was slightly off. But ever since the era of Sulphur Mountain City, she had been my most trusted subordinate. Fine, the main reason was that my other subordinates were far too unreliable and untrustworthy. She separated work from personal matters, was calm when faced with problems, and was deeply trusted by her colleagues. Most importantly, she had common sense, which was more than enough to leave those bastards behind. Due to Amelia's appearance, after her background and identity were exposed, the Church of Law's higher-ups' first reaction was whether or not she would leave. Without her, it would be difficult for the Church of Law to operate normally. That would be a huge problem. Fortunately, she had already made her choice by quietly working hard. She still chose to remain in the Church of Law. However, a few days ago, she and Amelia suddenly left, which surprised us quite a bit. She didn't tell us anything about what she had left behind. Now that we met her here, although we still had a method to communicate with each other, we were still quite surprised. Why are you here? Isn't Amelia together with you? Where's she? Lilith's face was pale as she shook her head. However, the blood seeping out of the corner of her mouth was the best explanation. When looking closely, it was obvious that she was ill and in poor condition. You're injured? Are your injuries serious? Lilith's life form had been changed by a secret forbidden spell. She was a special blood tribe with no previous generations. She was a so-called true ancestor. Although she was quite young compared to other blood tribe members, not only did she not fear sunlight, she was also quite powerful. Vampires were also blessed by the heavens when it came to recovering from injuries. When even her most precious blood went out of control, it was likely that she was seriously injured. Cough. I'm a bit injured. I didn't drink blood. I instantly understood. Due to certain reasons, Lilith's long-term meal ticket had always been girls she was close to. She had never attacked anyone before. Apparently, as a blood tribe member who followed the Church of Law, she had a rather high moral bottom line. Even though she was injured, she had no intention of attacking anyone. She had actually managed to survive until now. But now that her injuries were so severe, her instincts were almost out of control. She was even looking at Yawn with green eyes. Why was this picky vampire only looking at Yawn? Kolos had been Lilith's colleague for many years. Kolos knew exactly what she was thinking. Not only that, she had also been sent out on a mission today. Heloise appeared to be quite delicious, but Lilith's blood tribe instincts reminded her that underneath her beauty was definitely a terrifying monster. She couldn't even open her mouth. Little Red's dragon blood would be quite nutritious, but Lilith didn't even dare to mention it. Lilith's only choice was probably the female Grey Elf Knight. I can handle it. But since he was coughing up blood as he spoke, it was obvious that he couldn't continue holding on like this. Regardless of whether it was Drool's life magic or the Holy Knight's holy light, they would only have a negative effect on the blood tribe. Herbs and first aid wouldn't work on an undead body either. If he continued to lose blood, it was hard to say whether he would be able to maintain his sanity. Let me do it. Although that was what Yawn said, I knew that she wouldn't be able to do it. The moonlight ritual had a process that was similar to needles constantly piercing through the skin. The blood loss would be quite significant, and it would be difficult to replenish the blood loss now. Not to mention, it was quite easy for the blood tribe to lose control when they were injured. It would be difficult to say if Yawn was killed. Who else can do it? All right then, since there were no females, I would just have to make do with males. Lilith glanced over at me. Cohen was too weak, Eaglestorm was too old, and biting Bayphone was too dangerous for her. Then, her green eyes landed on me. She discovered to her astonishment that my master's blood had an alluring aroma similar to that of 300-year-old red wine. Master! Her hungry gaze sent chills down my spine. I looked left and right, only to see that everyone was taking pleasure in my misfortune and that everyone was retreating in unison. I had dug a hole for myself, so I could only helplessly stretch out my sleeves and look out the window, not daring to even look. Be a little gentler. I'm most afraid of injections. Right? My blood vessels are rather deep, so you won't need to insert too many needles, right? Just bite me. All right then, at the very least, she was much better than those lousy nurses. Even though I was bleeding from just one mouthful, even though I was clearly reaching out with my arm, it was my neck that was hurting, who said that would feel great to have their blood sucked out by a blood tribe member. Step out, and I guarantee that I won't beat them to death. As for that strange, numbing pleasure after that, it was definitely a misconception. Yep, a misconception. What a rare delicacy. As expected of the Peach King. Shut up. If you keep talking nonsense, you won't get to drink anymore. You're saying that a dimensional descent occurred? How was that possible? Yes, and Amelia, why does this sound so strange? Met with an incredibly powerful opponent, and we were separated. But that's how she came to this conclusion. Soon, Lilith, who is now full of energy, was revived. She also explained what had happened in high spirits. It turned out that Amelia's sudden departure had been due to a major incident. The border conflict between the Bardi Empire and the Mage Country had already escalated into a local war. However, such a small matter wouldn't be enough to affect Amelia. After all, although she was one of the highest-ranked archmages in the Mage Country, as well as a member of the Bardi Empire's royalty, not only had she been inactive for many years, it was likely that both Bardi Empire and Bardi Empire wanted to remove her from the Bardi Empire due to her ridiculous behavior. What truly made her decide was a private message she received from her subordinates back in the Bardi Empire. The message mentioned that a large-scale blood sacrifice had occurred in Port Victoria, a commercial city that had just become part of the Bardi Empire. There seemed to be signs of high-level undead appearing there as well. Not only that, more than 20 strange black towers have been erected outside the city. The tips of these towers seemed to have purplish-black crystals that were glowing, and there seemed to be ghosts wailing in the surroundings. Soul-summoning towers were incredibly common in undead magic. Just like archmages' mage towers, they were also common mage fortresses. There were countless different types of towers based on their functions and sizes, but the most basic function was definitely there, summoning the souls of the dead and refining the souls into the undead mage's mana to increase the power of undead magic. As long as there were enough dead and undead in the area, an undead archmage with a soul-summoning tower would have nearly limitless mana. This was also why the gods despised the undead. However, the creator of the soul-summoning tower didn't dare to go too far or even interfere with the cycle of reincarnation. Souls that had their mana extracted from them could still enter the cycle of reincarnation, but the prerequisite was that they hadn't been transformed into an undead due to extreme hatred and pain. Although soul-summoning towers were weaker than mage towers, they were often made of undead materials, which meant that they were much cheaper to build and took much less time to build. Of course, the side effect was that everyone would want to beat them up. And whenever a soul-summoning tower was erected in a certain location, it would doubtlessly mean that a high-level undead already existed there, which would mean that the Holy Church's crusaders would probably be on their way. But since the Bardi Empire has already exiled the Holy Church and Holy Light job class members, and the government is still strangely silent, the various organizations and citizens of Port Victoria can only fend for themselves. Aunt Amelia has a friend there. Unfortunately, by the time we arrived, the situation was already in chaos. The undead plane's descent has already begun. Lilith's story caused everyone in the room to suck in a cold breath. Although she said it so casually, anyone who knew what a dimensional descent was could imagine the hellish tragedy. But what astonished me even more was that Amelia actually had friends. Ahem, let's get back to the main topic. Are you certain that it's a dimensional descent and not just the opening of a death plane dimensional door? This is Aunt Amelia's judgment. Plus, with everything that happened afterwards, there should be no mistake. Dimensional descent was a term that mages rarely used. It referred to the fact that two planes were so close to each other that parts of the plane would overlap. This usually happened around dimensional doors. For example, if the Earth elemental dimensional door in Antune had successfully opened, the surrounding environment would undergo elemental dimensional transformation. The large number of small and medium-sized Earth elementals that naturally formed at that time was the best evidence. But even if a dimensional door was completely connected, it would still count as the surrounding environment undergoing dimensional transformation. There wouldn't be a complete overlap between the two planes. If the dimensional transformation brought about by an ordinary dimensional door was like adding sugar to a cup of water, then a dimensional descent would be the equivalent of 2 cups of water being squeezed into a cup. The end result would most likely be the cup shattering. If the dimensional descent is an elemental plane, then more than half of the living creatures in the area will instantly die. The remaining survivors will also take on the characteristics of elemental creatures, and they'll probably never be able to return to the mortal plane. If the dimensional descent is an undead plane filled with negative energy, undoubtedly, as a magic expert, Heloise was the most qualified to make a judgment. But judging from her current expression and silence, she didn't seem too optimistic about the current Victoria port. I trust Amelia's judgment. If it really is the death plane, there's no need to think about saving anyone. All the living will instantly transform into the dead, and a part of the death plane will appear there. Moreover, it was most likely permanent. This is even more troublesome than the land of the dead. I nodded. Heloise's judgment was basically the same as mine, but I thought of even more trouble. Since Amelia has already become a part of the undead plane, then certain existences that are restricted by the dimensional laws of the undead plane can descend here. No wonder Amelia was in trouble. It's highly likely that she encountered a true undead emperor. Obviously, The famous city of Victoria had already become history. Almost 1 million people had been transformed into undead, and the Undead Plains leaders had their own outposts. However, I felt that since the Bardi Empire had paid such a heavy price, it would definitely leave a bad name in history. That wouldn't be all. The Bardi officials aren't responding at all. No, they've blocked off all information. When I escaped, I even saw the Night Squadron blocking off the main road leading to Victoria. Not only that, the caped undead were openly communicating with the military officers, while the skeleton soldiers and zombies were being taken in by the human officers. It was evident that they had reached an agreement. Also, I heard some news. It seems that the Bardi officials are spreading the news that the new undead army is helping the Bardi Empire defeat the Mage Country. Although there's quite a bit of protest, it seems that the Bardi officials are suppressing them. Victoria Harbor was by the sea, and the Mage Country was on the other side of the strait. With so much information appearing, I could pretty much guess what the Bardi Empire intended to do. Victoria Harbor was originally a commercial city that belonged to another country. It was a territory that the Bardi Empire had only recently obtained, so it wasn't in the Bardi Empire's favor to begin with. There weren't many warships stationed at the commercial port, and the small and medium-sized merchant ships that were stationed at the port wouldn't be able to carry many people. The Bardi Empire's famous and powerful land forces would only become targets even if they entered the Strait of Debar. It would be impossible for them to use their geographical advantage for military operations. So much information had appeared. It would be quite troublesome if my guess was correct, so I directly asked Harlois, "How wide is the Strait of Debar? I only want the distance in a straight line." Jan directly took out a map and used a ruler to draw on it. She then abruptly raised her head after calculating the distance. "It's less than 200 kilometers. If the undead army has to travel at full speed, 1 day and night will definitely be enough." The undead didn't fear exhaustion, nor did they need to breathe. What other life forms viewed as insurmountable natural obstacles were nothing more than flat roads for the undead. The seawater was turbulent. The waves were deadly. Even with such a violent storm raging on the horizon, the bottom of the ocean should still be calm. All the ports on the other side of the sea that could reach the shore were being guarded. In that case, let's just find a random unguarded area and go ashore. Using the undead's unique life form to use all sorts of unconventional tactics was something that I had left behind in the past. But since there was already a precedent, it naturally became a conventional tactic. At this point, the situation was already very clear. Even the king of a country would not be so obviously reckless. At the very least, if he wanted to unify the various forces in the country, he would have to attach a shell of common interest to his crazy actions and give his subordinates a justifiable reason. The current Bardi Empire was probably still in a cooperative relationship with the undead emperors. As long as the undead could prove their worth, there would be even more opportunities to cooperate with them. Naturally, the undead would also be of assistance. As for Victoria Harbor, which had just been taken over by the Bardi Empire's enemies, who would care about that? If the undead army suddenly launches a surprise attack from underwater, with a high-level undead present, even the Mage Country might not be able to defend against it. It's likely that Amelia received some sort of information, which is why she personally came here. "Lilith, do you have any detailed information on Amelia?" Lilith had an uneasy expression as she shook her head. She seemed to lack confidence. "No, the dimensional descent happened not long after we arrived. I'm a member of the Blood Tribe, so I'm naturally fine. But Aunt Amelia, no matter how strong she is still a human. She previously fought against a very strong opponent, and I think she was injured." I smiled at Lilith's unease. Perhaps this would be a desperate situation for others, but I didn't feel that anything would happen to that insane witch. Her existence far surpassed the limits of life. "Relax. She's even more inhuman than you are. Relax, Lady Lilith. I can sense that in that direction, Lady Amelia's life force is still as strong as ever. Not only can she last for a month, she can even last for 2 or 3 years. Right now, the one in trouble isn't her. It's the undead that angered her." Lilith was rather skeptical of Eaglestorm's conclusion as he closed his eyes in deep thought. That was because even the legend drool wouldn't be able to make such a conclusion from such a great distance. However, Heloise and I exchanged glances. Eaglestorm had also seen Amelia's complete form in the Earth elemental plane. As a forest dweller, Drool's perception of the forest was a natural talent ability, so it was quite normal for him to make such a judgment. If he said that Amelia wouldn't be in trouble for the time being, then she really would be fine. Even if the worst-case scenario was that Amelia revealed her complete form, she still wouldn't be easy to deal with. I relaxed when I thought of this. But since so much had happened, it was obvious that the rest of our itinerary was set. Speed up the preparations and gather all the equipment. We'll depart the day after tomorrow at the latest. It'll be best if we can find a merchant group to protect us. If not, we'll just sneak across.